always going to be some good people in that organization that truly care, that are there for the right reasons, that are trying to help. Maybe they're squashed, maybe they just don't get promoted and they're at the very bottom, whatever it is. But like, I'm never talking about like every single individual who works for XYZ, right? Generally, the corruption is by design at the leadership level, or the system is created to support the corruption. So I've worked with some cases where, anyway, there was a questionable situation and there were two CPS agents that really went above and beyond and did a really good job. So like, I love seeing the good examples, of course. They're just unfortunately few and far between sometimes.
So, and I appreciate the fact that you would rather be wrong about the child and not say anything at all. But I think we as a society have this weird thought system that when we say something, even if that child is in imminent harm, that they're going to end up in a better place. And sometimes not saying something is actually better.
Right. That's like taking more time to understand. You know what I mean? Because I'm not asking people to turn a blind eye, but it's like, we have to understand that the system is inherently designed to protect corruption. So reporting a crime to that system is not always the linear way to solve that problem.
Right. Right. So the thing about it, when I said that when I was 7, I was taken away from my mom, right? Now, I never met my biological father. So it was just my mom. My mom actually gave birth to me when she was 14 years old. So it was basically my mom and my grandparents raising me and my uncles, right? So my mom was a massive drug addict and an alcoholic. I very rarely saw her because she was running around town. Then one of the main reasons why I was removed from my biological family was because my mom was a drug addict and an alcoholic, right? But my grandparents always took very good care of me. I wasn't in imminent danger, but the system saw an opportunity to put another child into custody for what? For federal incentives, for financial incentives. It wasn't for the better part of the child, right? So,
and the problem is that our system is so incentivized, and it's not just the CPS system; it's also our prison system.
Oh yeah,
that we lose
I did almost 6 years in prison. Trust me, I get it. Yeah,
right. But we've lost focus on what it means to be in a rehabilitative situation, and we've lost focus on what it means to be a victim. Especially, I mean, I don't know. A lot of you guys probably don't know a lot about my story, but I was arrested in multiple states in the U.S. and prosecuted, all while being trafficked, and asked for help and did not get it. So, I mean, if you really think that there's not corruption on so many levels, like that, I don't know what else would be a perfect example of that. Like, how do you take a victim who's begging for help off the streets, throw them in jail, and end up with felonies on her record when she's literally a victim in a situation she has no control of?
Exactly. There are so many things. There's so many layers of this problem. Like what Makes This Fire says. So it sounds like the answer is there is no answer. There's no good answer. How do you determine the child truly needs help? Like, to me, the shortest way I can summarize all of the above is like, this is a complex problem. It's not a one-size-fits-all problem. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution. There are multiple layers of all these different aspects of this problem. So like, take this 3-letter agency that is supposed to be protective of children as an example, and then take a million other aspects of this issue. Like there's what's happening at the border, there's what's happening in this and this and this and that. All those categories have all these layers of problems and therefore need layers of solutions. So it's not an easy fix. However, generally the answer is to better understand the layers of that problem. Meaning we have to have a trauma-informed understanding. So it would be great if more of these agencies and policymakers were listening to survivors and including people with lived experience in these decision-making processes. Why? Because there are many complex issues to be considered. For example, there are a lot of efforts that are supposed to help that did not help, that actually made things worse, and that resulted in more children no longer being alive. Literal attempts to help resulted in more children lost. So these are things we take very seriously, and they're also things that are very complex to solve. So like, I love these types of discussions where we can unpack them. but for the public to understand, like, I'm big on what we can do to not only prevent, but to plan accordingly. Meaning, with the premise that this issue of child trafficking and exploitation is intentional, that means logical solutions don't apply. That means that we don't have to go like tell the government about it and act like they're going to do something to solve this problem. It means we have to, again, take the time to understand every layer of this problem and formulate solutions for each of those layers of this problem. So yeah, training is a big
And I mean,
Hey Kim, can
I think it's important to understand that, like,
could you make a video on that and send it to me right there?
We will.
About talking about the, these politicians needing to sit and listen to survivors because of that multi-layer. Could you make a video for me, or for you too? I'm sure.
Yeah, I will do my
Which
best. For sure. Go ahead, Becca.
I wanted
also think it's
to
important
say
to note
something
that-
really. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's also important to note that we're not telling you not to say something, but it's more important to understand who you should say something to, because there are situations where you can get law enforcement. And I mean, perfect example, Idaho. I mean, I was in contact with police because of a sting operation, was identified as a trafficking survivor, went through the entire process with all of the detectives there, and they walked me out the door with a card to a local homeless shelter. That is not fucking rescuing somebody.
I was going to say is
But that's
not
that's the problem. Is there's not the problem with this is that law enforcement can only do so much, and if there's not a bridge in place for those survivors to go to, you might as well leave them where the fuck they are, because once you get out of that situation, one, you have nowhere to go, you don't have an identity, you don't have any money. Most of us don't have family to rely on at that point. So you end up right back on the streets. And let me tell you, traffickers don't stay locked up for long.
All right, so that actually
Kim.
answered part of my question right there. What I wanted to say for Becca, but forgive me for interrupting, because obviously it goes without saying that trafficking is not an accident. So it's not like whoops, that kind of thing. But real quick, I just wanted to say for Malibu and Becca and even Tyler there, I appreciate it, as I'm sure Kim does, the being here. That takes a lot of guts to go on there and say what you have to say. That's a real person. I mean, you could be going healing and hiding or whatever, and you're not doing that. You're choosing. Don't discount it. Just you being here, just on TikTok and speaking, what Malibu had to say, what Becca's sharing with us, and so on. And for the subsequent people that would be able to do that, you're setting a good precedent for a conversation, and you're unafraid. And I believe that people need to acknowledge that. I appreciate that. I respect that, because that can't be easy. And I felt the need. I felt compelled to say that out loud, because that is the best that the human spirit has to offer. When you can go and hide and heal, and instead you want to, it might be too late here, and I might be damaged, or I might be traumatized, but I'm going to help so that maybe, just maybe, it's not going to happen to a next person, stranger or not. That takes a lot of heart. And I appreciate that, because I've heard so many gut-wrenching stories. I mean, my heart goes out to you, to Becca, all of you. And I'm sure you've heard that before. I mean, I'm not going to stop until, and don't laugh, I'm not going to stop until we get Kim in front of Congress. You laugh if you will, but I swear to God, if they could go in there and talk about steroid use, or they could talk about this or talk about that, and there's all these 3-letter agencies we're talking about, what did you say, 76 billion, which we've talked about is even more than the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, and MLB combined. So there's no paper trail. So there's no more blissful ignorance, but these are real people. This is not scripted. This is not entertainment. These are real people's lives that you're talking about. And I appreciate that. Every time we do one of these, even more respect for people, because I don't see them as victims. I see them as heroes. That's my opinion. But I want Kim to get in front, and I'll do whatever I can. We're a small station, but I will do whatever I can. You need to get in front. Kind of what Becca, I was going to ask her. She is asking for help and gets tossed in jail. Now, I'm sure there's a backstory, and maybe this isn't the time or place to hear about it. However, who it's not asking for help. It's like she touched on it. It depends on who you're asking for that help. Is this even the right person? Are they going to send you to the wrong place? Is it exacerbating the actual problem as a whole? Or for the next person? See, there's a lot of ifs, what's, what. We don't have these answers, but the conversations and the congregating, so to speak, not for outrage, which I obviously have a lot of, but to be able to actually do something about it. And this just go, oh, well, this sucks and I'm pissed and everything. And then it ends there. No. This goes beyond that. So I just wanted to say that because it needed to be said out loud. And I wanted to do that. But I will let you continue on. But thank you for being here because you guys are not victims. You're heroes. You really are. And you're going to help somebody that you'll never meet. But that's okay. And then maybe they'll do the same thing. That's the good way to pay it forward. But something needs to be done now. Not then, not maybe, now. And it can be done. But it's going to take all of us to do it. It is. It's going to take all of us, but it's not. It didn't happen overnight, so it's not going to get fixed overnight. But it will get fixed, and I love the fact that there's people that instead of going and hiding, that you're actually doing something and you're taking a chance. You got a bullseye on you. I know that I have. I know Kim constantly does, and you do too. And it doesn't matter. You're still doing it anyway. That takes heart. Once again, I'll repeat myself. That's the best that the human spirit has to offer, in my opinion. And I'll yield.
Well, I mean, I will. Kim will talk.
Hold on, Becca. I want to try and say something. Guys, we've been fighting this for a few years together. We started 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember, but when I met Kim, years ago, she was phenomenal. Individual to meet, to be able to expand on the knowledge of what happens to the children. And when I met Kim for the first time, I dropped everything, my whole life, everything to help them. And people, come to Kim and Becca and even me, and they say, "Oh, you're a wonderful hero," or "I appreciate what you do." It's awesome that we get that appreciation. But that's not why we do this. We do this because we want you and everyone else to wake up and do something about it. Because you guys don't know how much it tears at each and every one of our souls to even be a part of this. Because I don't know how I'm still here being able to do this, but guys, I just wish people would wake up and help. Because I've lost a lot of my rights, my personal rights to help the children. And, I can't even protect my family the way I want to, or even be with my family. But I try to give as much as I can for these children. And, there's so much layers that we can do to be able to, like what Kim's talking about, so many different avenues that we can attack this. And, and Kim will explain all of it, but I really would love to, since I got Becca and Kim here, I would love us to do a live, either on the multi-stream, something that we can record and get your voices on a video. And I'm going to go take this to DC and I will shove it down their throats again and make them listen, because I'm sick and tired of it. Because if they're not going to stand up for us and the children, then they don't need to be a leader. They're not.
I agree with you. The sad truth is that they're not going to. Full stop. Like, they just won't. So right. So like I that I love the fuck out of you, brother. You know what I mean? Like, you are one of the people that are like, you are one of my people. That being said, like, I'm not under the premise that we need to make them aware and that they will do something to help. So what I have focused on are the people that do have the jurisdiction that can be helpful, which generally speaking are service members, meaning they have the training, they have the they have the training, but they normally don't have the resources. Or like in law enforcement's case, they don't have the actual specialized training to combat this. Also, it's not just this one size fits all, like linear, let's just train them and then it's done. It's a complex issue that needs specialized training. So Becca, I'm actually super glad you're here tonight for many reasons, but you're one of the people that I want to bring in to work with to create these law enforcement training programs, because you should also come.
Yes.
This is just a lot of fun. But like,
And you know how vocal I am about what has
Yes.
happened with me with law enforcement. Like,
Yes.
you guys don't understand. I have straight up sat in this
Sign
room
up.
before in a box with law enforcement sitting above us. And what did I tell him? You remember that?
I do remember that.
What did I tell him? I straight up asked him, like, hey, what happens to the person after they're done with the detectives? And he couldn't answer that question. And I said, then before you hand another one off, you better find an answer.
Yes, I remember that. So I've been in all these situations like, okay, let's first, acknowledge law enforcement is not responsible, is not tasked with, and should not be tasked with the aftercare portion, right? So they rescue children. There should be a handoff to a well-equipped other entity. Okay, that's not law enforcement's jurisdiction. However, I've asked those same questions. So we're standing up task forces, we're making rescues, which is amazing. And I'm like, hey, where do these kids go when they're rescued? And they look at me, and I was literally like, a good friend of mine that I have huge respect for. He looked at me and he was like, I have no idea. I've never thought about that. That's why we need you. And I'm like, Lord Jesus, help us. Okay. So the point is that with all the love in my heart, you know what I mean? There's the intentional corruption, which is one whole big glaring elephant in the room problem, right? Then there's also the intentional lack of, let's say, training, resources, awareness. Then there's the intentional lack of, let's call it, procedures or people that need to be in place. So again, there's multiple layers to this. Becca, I'm in the, I want to say I don't even know how, but anyway, it's kind of, let's call it miraculous, and also with some dark humor, I don't know how the fuck, but anyway, now I'm training law enforcement and they're requesting training. So I work at the Ranch, Texas. It's a law enforcement and government contractor training facility. It's a very highly respected training facility. It used to be a Blackwater site, if y'all are familiar. This place has a lot of history. Anyway, lots of really cool stuff going on here in many different realms, but also we have the respect and the attention and the trust of multiple law enforcement agencies and departments all over the country. We are not law enforcement, meaning we don't have any of the bureaucracy that blah, 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 but they all come train here. So when we have these fireside chats, when we talk about ways to help, most of these people care, and they've either been blocked or just intentionally kept away from this entire issue. So these conversations are really interesting because it goes along the lines of basically I'm able to understand a lot of the things that are either in their way locally or at their level of whatever jurisdiction they have, and or just the true lack of understanding of this problem. And when I tell them things that to me are very obvious and intuitive, like where do the kids go once they're rescued, it's, the people that I'm talking to, right? They're hungry for solutions. They actually want to help. So Becca, I want to pull in you and CP. I've already talked to CP a little bit about this, but pulling you guys in as consultants, because isn't it the most incredible 360 to be in the position now where we can create these procedures that don't exist, where we can create templates that can be implemented in various situations. So for example, how to actually be helpful and ensure that the help is actually helpful. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's amazing, but I think on the negative side of that, being from the fact that I'm also heavily involved, and this, in a safe house for trafficking for children victims, there is not the infrastructure in place to be able to place that web countrywide, which is the bigger problem, is the fact that there is a ton of funding that is going to the wrong hands into situations that are not actually protecting the children.
Yes.
So you cannot make procedures to keep victims safe if there is nowhere safe for them to go.
I 100% agree with you. So on a small, there are some smaller efforts that seem to be very effective. On a larger scale, we do not have the support that's needed to house and protect these children once they're rescued. 100% agree with you. There are smaller efforts that are unfolding, and I'm also part of the effort of not only vetting these safe houses, but ensuring they're really safe and following up and blah, 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 with all the different children, different situations. It's a monumental task, as you know, and as everyone here can recognize. And we have to start somewhere. We have to create a blueprint or a template to have at least the basics covered, because they're just not even scratching the surface.
I don't disagree, but where my issue with that lies, because we've tried to do this in Tulsa. I've been through plenty of law enforcement trainings there and gone through CLEAT certifications and all of that with law enforcement. So it's not something that I'm I'm immune to. The problem is putting that blueprint in place. You can't put a procedure in place if it can't actually be followed. That's setting them up for failure again.
Right. So
do you see what I'm so like we need to
100%.
figure out the bigger problem is the fact that there is a million people who are saying that they're helping who are not. And if you set up that blueprint and people don't vet those agencies, right, then those kids are going to fall right back into the wrong hands again. And all that's going to happen is they're going to end up right back where they were. So my issue with setting up a blueprint is not setting one up to fail the kids again.
100%. Go ahead, Malibu, then I'll jump in.
Okay, so talking about the blueprint, right? We're talking about accountability. We're talking about a viable blueprint of responsibility of a magnitude that most people can't comprehend when it comes to rescuing the children. Rescuing, like you said, Kim, rescuing the children is step one. And then you're telling me, okay, when we hand off the kids, where do they go? And you're telling me that you got police officers and sheriffs and officials looking at you going, what?
Yes.
What are you talking
They
about?
totally do, dude. I
Right?
called
So
people out on this.
So here's my point is we have a constitution. We have a federal constitution. Now, this is just an analogy for you guys, okay? So we have a federal constitution and we have a state's constitution. Kim, I'm here with you in Texas. We have a Texas constitution, right? We have blueprints we have laws that have been set in place. We have, constitutionally protected rights set in place. We have all these different things that judges don't follow. Most police officers don't follow. We have CPS agents that don't follow the freaking law. They follow policy, right? If we just followed the law, 90% of these freaking issues would be solved, right? But none of these agencies are following the law. They're following policy.
No,
so
they wouldn't be though. And the reason why I can say that for sure is because, and I say this all the time, most laws regarding trafficking, specifically trafficking, are feel-good laws. So you can put anything in place as a law. But if you are not giving the people who are intended to actually prosecute those laws the resources to actually prosecute them, then they mean nothing.
That's part of what I was going to lead into is the accountability for that, right? A lot of the laws need to be refined to be executed more appropriately, but we're also looking at individuals in these positions that, like you said, it's like it's talking to a wall. You're saying, like, yeah, we're mentioning these things to Congress people, politicians. We're trying to go up to the higher levels of government to try to get some of these things solved, and it's just like some of our words and our pleas are falling on deaf ears. Well, that's because most of these politicians haven't been victims of child trafficking. They haven't seen the actual suffrage of children who are actually going through this. So the only way to really change some of this stuff is to put people who have suffered through this stuff in those positions where they can actually recognize it for what it is and truly want to actually make that change. Like I have so many people telling me that I should run for office. I'm like, well, maybe I should, right?
Get behind it.
Because I actually care.
But here's the thing.
Tim actually cares.
A lot of the leadership in this country, and I don't care if I get banned at this point, a lot of the leadership in this country, people who we quote unquote vote into office, partake in the problem. They know it exists. I personally can tell you that they partake in the problem, and that's why they don't care, because it makes them, as long as they can remain ignorant to the problem, then people don't they don't question it. But when you start uncovering those stones and start realizing that the people who are in power are actually causing the issue, then what? No one wants to expose our entire government.
Bingo.
That's what
she
I'm
just
saying.
hit it right on the head.
The right people in power to make the changes.
So,
but who are the right people? Like this is the issue, right?
Hard.
It's like,
go ahead, Becca.
This is the issue, is we keep saying, well, we need to have trustworthy people in power. We need to have these people in power. Well, that's not the problem. That's not the problem at all. The problem is we have people that are stuck in places of power who have so many skeletons in their closet. It is absolutely unfathomable what they've actually done. And they're stuck in this realm of corruption that is our government, which is producing so much red tape that all they are doing, quote unquote, is making feel-good efforts to hopefully not get seen as the actual predators that they are.
100%. What she said.
That's right on the money. Sometimes I disagree with parts of what some people say. I don't disagree with not one damn thing that she just said. Seriously. And I got to tell you, because obviously it's sad to say that she has firsthand knowledge of this. It seems like same thing with Malibu. But I have a quick question. Maybe somebody on this panel, even Kim, I do not know the answer to this. Malibu said something about the federal constitution, and then there's also a state constitution. All states have their own. My question is, keeping it aside with the corruption part, and we already know that's a gimme. Does the federal, I would think, just being a casual observer, let's say, that federal would supersede any state one, but are they conflicting? Not that I need to hear an excuse about it, but does the state one conflict with the federal one, and that's why it's just basically going nowhere? Or does the federal one supersede, you would think, because that state is in the United States? So I'm not sure if can anyone answer that one? I'd love to know that if you know.
Nothing's supposed to conflict with the federal constitution, right? The Constitution of the United States. Each state can have its own like specialized laws for more state related things. But like on a broader level, I want to also agree with everything Becca said. Like the system itself is designed to support the corruption. That's a very nice way of saying it. Can you tell? All right. The people in power, in my opinion, you cannot climb to that level of power or that rank in politics unless you are, let's just call it, controlled. So she mentioned skeletons in the closet. Whether the person actually has skeletons in the closet and or they are controlled by the fear that those who control them will create skeletons in their closet. The people in Washington are too cowardly and corrupt to even pretend to care about child trafficking. I said what I said. Here's what I mean. They're not even pretending to care and making sounds with their mouth about it to get votes. They're not even talking about it on the presidential debate stage when they're allegedly live in front of the world and they could trash their opponent with the facts. Nope, they're not even pretending to care like they're pretending to care about the war on drugs. The point is that they are too cowardly and corrupt because it would be a very good look. Coming from a marketing and PR standpoint, it would look really good if a politician pretended to care. Notice that I'm emphasizing like making sounds with their mouth. That's it, right? They're not even doing that. So I am not under the impression that we should wait for the right person to make sounds with their mouth or come and save the day. I am also under the impression that we cannot rely on that level of leadership to solve this problem that, like Becca said, they have either created or are at least protecting, or at the very least turning a blind eye to, which means they're still guilty, okay? That does mean it's up to we the people. So I'm back to, since they won't, that means we must. Now, what does that mean? As far as laws, so I agree, like trafficking is already illegal, child abuse is already illegal, other words I can't use, already illegal. We shouldn't have to have new laws to make them more illegal, nor do I think those laws would actually be enforced. So a lot of times there's XYZ organization supporting some new bill or a new Band-Aid or some new papers being signed and pictures being taken. But those bills, while they have fancy names or pretty titles, like something about protecting children usually, when you look into them, they are just not really protecting children, and they conveniently bypass the actual problem, but they make it look so pretty and appease people as if the problem is being solved, so that well-meaning people will look the other way and just assume that this hero they voted for got it, right? A lot of examples of that, both recently and in years past. But for example, there's this, I work a lot in the digital realm, protecting children, etc. I'm really big on why the fuck do we still have a problem with child sex abuse material? That's a stupid fucking problem to have. Don't excuse my French. That's just a stupid fucking problem that we should not have in 2025. That being said, there's a new bill recently, the Protect Act, that talks about like, unconsensual images, doesn't even mention children. So like of all the Band-Aids that we're putting on the wrong wound, they're always conveniently bypassing the real problems. I definitely call that intentional, but I want to call people's attention also that we shouldn't rely on the federal government or even the state government to solve these problems for us. It means we, the people, have to be a little creative. I'm not calling for anarchy, though. However, when I'm talking about training law enforcement and creating these procedures that don't exist, I'm literally talking about, quite frankly, reinventing the wheel. Because there's not even a fucking wheel most of the time, and if there is a wheel, it's fucking broken. So, for example, having the trauma-informed aftercare. I'm not relying on the three-letter agency that is supposed to protect children and is a terrible idea for survivors of child trafficking. What I'm talking about is, I've mentioned this earlier, but we're setting up these medical triage centers, creating these things that don't yet exist, but with the protection. This is where it, I mean, all of it's quite complex, but I'm not asking or letting the federal government create, for example, these survivor centers because I don't trust that they will actually be effective. I think, as much as I would like the federal government to be more helpful, I don't think we can rely on them to be safe and effective, if you know what I mean, when it comes to this issue. So, on a broader picture, there's no money in protecting children. That's also the rhetorical answer to a lot of rhetorical questions that I could ask about why this is a problem. Therefore, my squirrely ass brain is like, how do we make protecting children a profit-driven incentive? How do we make it self-funded? How do we create the funds to create these projects that need, like, we kind of have to start with the funding and then work backwards, if that makes sense, because who's behind these efforts is just as important as whether or not there's an effort. Does that make sense? So I'm not trying to spend all this time making new Band-Aids. So I've come across some people that, long story short, is that we can help create these things and they can be self-sustainable in a way that the federal government does not have the control, and in a way that they are authorized, meaning you do have to have there's a lot of red tape when it comes to dealing with minors, and especially with the whole trauma-informed aftercare part of it. So I know I'm being pretty general, but like, I'm not going to go too detailed here on the public web, but does that make sense? The wheel needs to be reinvented, but not by the government. What do you guys think?
I mean, you already know how I feel about that. I mean, and I think it's also important to understand that, like, dealing with a trafficking survivor is like the layers we have is like taking an onion, squashing it as hard as you can squash it, and then peeling little layers back at a time, and having to understand that there's a million other layers that come with one layer.
Accurate.
Because like we have so much trauma that like even the littlest things seem huge. I mean, the perfect example of this, like it was probably 3 weeks after I was rescued and out of that situation, I got a state ID with my own picture and my own name on it for the first time in 10 years. That was like a life-changing moment for me. Like, to stand there and be recognized for who I really was. It might seem stupid because everybody has an ID, but for 10 years I wasn't who I was. I mean, I don't know how to describe that feeling that came from just a stupid piece of plastic.
No, I get it. And these are the kinds of foundational things that need a bigger understanding, not really by the general public, because, like, bless their hearts, but not everyone can be that helpful. There are definitely ways the public can be helpful, but I'm saying, like, the public doesn't need to know every detail and complication of this matter, but anyone involved, any expert, and definitely anyone accepting money from anywhere, the federal government or otherwise, you know what I mean, need to have an understanding of this problem, because otherwise the solutions just don't apply, or they're just Band-Aids, and that's not actually helping the problem.
And I think it's also funny that, like, people have asked me, well, like, what worked for you? And I just because something worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for Kim. Like, we all react to trauma differently. I don't know a single survivor who doesn't suffer from PTSD. Not a single one. And the things that trigger us, the things that make us happy, the things that we have to work through to unpack some of that trauma is different for every single one of us. And, like, the way we express our freedoms. Like, for me, being able to walk outside of my home, get in my car, and go wherever I want to is the biggest sense of freedom I have. Because no one can stop me from going somewhere.
100%.
But for other trafficking survivors, leaving their home is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like, again, it's a pretty generalized term, but the trauma-informed response. It literally just means the individualized approach. It means there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And a lot of well-meaning people and their bias leads them to believe that this has to be the thing that allows you to heal, and you can't heal without whatever they think is the solution. I'm not saying, like...
Oh man, that safe house I went to, when I first got out, guys, like they thought Jesus was the answer for everything, okay? So like if we were struggling with something, it was go to church, get your Bible and pray about it. Like I did not need to hear that at that point. Like I was so mad at God that I didn't even think God existed at that point. Like my spiritual realm was so disconnected from like reality at that point that like every time I said that, I just wanted to roll my eyes and throw something at them. Like that is not the solution. Or you have to be home by 7:00. Like, okay, but what happens if I don't want to come home by 7:00? Like what happens if I want to go to an NA meeting or like get a job that has hours after 7:00? Like that wasn't freedom. Yes, I wasn't being trafficked at the time, but then I had like a million other rules that I didn't know how to follow that I had to follow, and it was awful.
Yeah. The whole religion thing, like, I mean, y'all know my feelings on this, but like, I'm all for y'all do whatever y'all want to do. When it comes to children that we're rescuing from traumatic situations, let's not assume that our lens of the world will apply to them. Just because it's peace and happiness for someone to sing about Jesus or God or whatever does not mean it's helpful for that child in their state of trauma and in their level of, their stage of healing or whatever you want to call it. So like a lot of safe houses have this requirement. I've literally vetted them for survivors. They're like, well, they can be here, but they have to like get up every morning and sing about Jesus. And I'm like, hey, they were just rescued from a religious cult. Can we just not, like while they heal, can we just like, not for a little bit? And they're like, nope, it's a requirement. You can't heal without Jesus. And they like start attacking me. And I'm like, okay. I know you're...
I remember that story, Kim.
Like,
I remember that one. That was an unbelievable story, but that's fine to have religion, in my opinion. And, I'm Christian, I'm Catholic, but that should be in addition to, not instead of. It's not to replace, like, this is the answer to everything, because that, like, if somebody wants to have a job after 7 p.m., like what she just said, just real quick, and, well, that's not always conducive to your life. Well, now you're in a completely different prison now. So I don't get how that is helpful. But if you have a Bible in your hand and you go, and I'm not slamming religion, it works for a lot of people. It has for me, but it should be in addition to, not a replacement of. And real quick, and touching what everyone said, circling back, that's a big stumbling point. It's easy math. If there's people in power that are involved, forget about the skeletons in the closet for a minute. We already know that. But that's why it's not going anywhere. It's not to be, counterproductive here, but we already know that. It's how they're going to have to be unraveled. They're going to have to be exposed. Easier said than done. A lot of protection, a lot of money that swirls around that. I'm just saying what needs to be said because you already know all this. This is not a surprise to anybody in here, okay? But how do we, how do we do that? Because that's not an easy task. When you have that much money and power that you're going up against, it's viable. But God, you need like an army, and I guess that's what we're going to need. So be it. You got to unmask them and expose them, and then the rock will start moving. Stupid analogy, but you get what I'm saying. That really pisses me off because it's not like we don't know. Real quick, remember in The Untouchables where they said, well, everybody knows what they're doing in there. It's not a problem of that we don't know where. It's who's got the balls to go through that door. If you recall that part of the movie, it's very similar. How do you go about that without putting yourself in danger or others even worse, or making it worse for a child? That's where I kind of lose my way right there, because I'm ready, willing and able. I don't just talk the talk, but I'm not sure how to approach it. So it's a question and a statement all in one. That's all I was saying.
Here's the problem with that is some of these politicians have been publicly exposed for some of the stuff they have done in this realm. and we have turned a blind eye to it.
Senator Durbin.
They have publicly been exposed, and we still have elected them back into office. Please answer how, or please explain that. It's because it's for several reasons, but one, our media intentionally does not cover or give focus on things like this, because our media is just as corrupt as everything else, and their whole reasoning right now is to create fear and division in between us.
Secondly, I know that.
Secondly, the people who are being exposed have so much money that they just pay people off for it to go away. And third, once you expose a tip of an iceberg, there's a whole iceberg underneath it that comes out, i.e. Epstein. Perfect example.
Right. And then they do nothing, and they blame each other because divided we fall, and they know that.
Hey, speaking of which, can I
So
do an interjection?
I don't think it's a matter of sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't think it's a matter of exposing people at this point. I don't, because the people have been exposed.
I agree.
It's a matter of getting people to fucking listen.
Oh.
We are very, 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 very susceptible as a society because none of us want to know the truth behind something that is so evil that we can't even wrap our brains around it. And that's the bigger problem. If we don't understand as a society that something exists, or we're intentionally ignorant to the fact that it exists, it's impossible to find a solution.
100%. If we think the bad people are going to arrest themselves. Go ahead, Tyler.
Can I say something on that?
Tyler's first.
And then Malibu. Go ahead, Tyler.
Because I forget real quick. You were talking about Epstein. So I work with Nick Bryan at Epstein Justice. One thing that we're doing right now is we're trying to hold politicians accountable. So we're working on every so often we're dropping a congressman, and we're going to call them and ask them if they will pledge to have a congressional commission for Jeffrey Epstein's survivors. So we're wanting to do that, and we're going to put like a picture, kind of like Shared Hope, how they call out their the legislators. We're going to do something similar and either say they're committed or not, and kind of push that at them. I'm going to be doing that with Congressman Mann tomorrow, actually. So if you want to figure out get the information for the Epstein info, real info, go to EpsteinJustice.com and get your information from Nick Bryan. Him and his circles know all about it really well.
Nick Bryan,
I'll shut up.
You're good. Nick Bryan is the investigative journalist that exposed the Black Book many, many years ago. You can Google it. The names are in there, including the people in office today. So that answers a lot of questions, as it should. But to Becca's point, a lot of people still don't want to be aware. Even though those names are circled, they're still like, where are the names? It's because they want the names to not compete with their bias. So I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for the bad guys to rat on themselves, much less hold themselves accountable, much less fix the broken system. But I have huge respect for Nick and his work, so I'm with it. Go ahead, Malibu.
Hey guys. Okay. So we all know that I've been exposing CPS corruption, CPS trafficking for about 3 years now. I'm a published author. I'm a victim of child trafficking. My videos and stuff like that have reached millions and millions and millions of people all over this country, like a lot of other people exposing the corruption. And I agree with Becca. The exposure of it, we've done it. We've exposed it to the max, to where everybody in this country, unless you live under a rock, actually know what we are doing and what we have done. The exposure has been so great to where they are literally physically trying to shut me up in Texas. I don't know if you know this or not, but I have the state bar of Texas coming after me to shut me up permanently. They are claiming that I'm practicing law without a license. They want me to shut up. They want to silence me for a reason. is because it's not just me, it's people like me all over this country with a decent platform who have been exposing their ways for so long. And they know they're not stupid. They know we are about to accomplish some pretty amazing freaking shit. And they got to put a lid on it somehow. So we don't need to keep on exposing it. Yes, we need to keep on talking about it. We need to keep on organizing about it. We need to, make the blueprint. We need to come up with that viable stronghold on it to where they can't shut us up and silence us. So what do we do at that point? Like Kim said, it's all about the blueprint. It's all about binding together as one to come up with the plan to eliminate it all.
Yeah. I believe in hitting them where it hurts, which to Malibu and Becca's point is no longer exposure, because unfortunately the American people are willing to ignore things that conflict with their bias. See how nicely I said that? So, however, hitting them where it hurts means finding the things that will motivate the right people to get the right attention. So I want to introduce y'all to Protest the Church. We interacted on a recent live stream, and their team is doing amazing work. I don't know your whole team, but if you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing, if y'all know me, what's up? If y'all know me, you know that I've called out the church, not because I think they're going to be the ones leading by example, but because there is rampant abuse in the church, and I see them, generally speaking, obviously, quite silent about it and quite unwilling to acknowledge it and solve that problem. I know there are some good ones, but I'm saying that as a whole, the church should be leading by example, and that's not what we're seeing. So, Protest the Church. Welcome. Do you want to tell them about what you're doing? Because I think the strategy is actually pretty genius.
Hey, yeah, I'm Sarah, so I'm basically part one of two. Kevin is my old man altar that comes out with us. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus the last month or so, but we go specifically in Metairie, just outside New Orleans, to Amy Coney Barrett's dad's church, Deacon Mike Coney, as well as on occasion Steve Scalise's church when he's in the area. And I specifically yell at them at the congregation as they're going into church or as they're leaving about their complicity in tithing and funding towards, here in New Orleans, the over $44 million that has been spent in the last 5 years on the legal defense of the known predator priest, and not towards the settlement for the over 500 known child and adult victims, not including the ones that you're not aware about because of X, Y, and Z reasons.
Yeah, love it. So I think you were the one that opened my eyes to this. It might have been someone different, but I learned pretty recently, like in the last year, that many churches, if not all the big ones, have this very expensive child sex abuse insurance policy that they all contribute to every month to protect them from the retaliation or basically legal consequences of the things happening to children by the church, in the church body of believers / building / people / leadership, etc. The point is that for that policy to be such a rampant and popular thing and to be so expensive, that should raise a lot of concerns. Now, that being said, someone later told me, it was this podcast I did recently that hasn't come out yet. They were talking about problems and solutions, and they were like, you know what we should do? We should go to those insurance, not sure if I'm using the right word, insurance providers. We should have them, because I was talking about how I've made all these free programs to try to get the church to protect children, and I found it quite fruitless because they just, anyway, we're not interested. We're talking about hundreds of churches that were like, no thanks. Anyway, so they were like, we should go to the insurance policymakers, insurance policies. We should have them require these safeguards to protect children, and if the church does it, they get either a reduction, or if they don't do it, they have to pay more money for their policy. And I was like, oh, that's genius. So look, I don't feel called to go after all the churches because, again, like, I don't have 10 years to rock them into truth. But the point is that I see that as a genius way to get them where it hurts, meaning finances is always the lifeblood of any organization, especially the corrupt ones. But also, like, when we talk about the tech world or politicians or the churches or like whatever sector or community we're talking about, three-letter agency that's supposed to protect kids and does not, finances is always where it hurts the most. So back to my how can we make protecting kids a profit-driven incentive, I'll tell you about my other strategy in the tech world. I'm also going to talk about the strategy in the law enforcement world. It's really ridiculous, let's be real, that I have to be this creative and I don't know what solution, I don't know, be this creative about implementing solutions to help protect children. But we also have to have the clear understanding that the leadership of all these, ranks or organizations, whatever, they're not doing it on their own, and they won't unless we convince them to. Normally it takes some kind of profit-driven incentive to do so. Does that make sense? So Malibu, on the exposure side, I'm with you. Like, I wish the American public would be more motivated to protect kids once they understand the truth. However, a lot of people are willing to be, they're not willing to be aware, and or they're willing to ignore it. But there are ways that we can, let's call it, piss off the public with the truth and get them to start a movement that may incentivize politicians to follow suit, kind of like the make them famous strategy. Does that make sense? So, like, I know a lot about the CPS world, but I haven't specifically targeted that one yet. But I'm sure there are ways to bring those things to light, and I'm sure you've pursued some of those. But would that make sense for your world? Question from Malibu.
It does make sense, and like I said, the exposure has been quite extensive, and we've made quite a bit of people famous for that reason. But again, just because we're making them famous for it doesn't mean that's accountability is being taken.
Right. Well,
Hey, Kim.
like, just real quick, Tyler. Like, I don't know the actual structure of CPS. Like I said, it's not something I've like really focused on.
Oh, I know it very well.
What I'm getting on is like, is there somebody who is their biggest? Okay, where's their main source of income coming from? Probably government funding.
The Social Security Administration, Title 4E and Title 4D.
So I'd have to look more detailed into it, but like I would have to understand what are the qualifications, and I'm assuming they are defaulting on many of those qualifications or like proper forms of care, right?
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So the structure of it is I would say about 90% or so of Child Protective Services funding comes straight from the Social Security Administration. Now, it's a federal program. Every single agency has to, if it's not privately owned, well, I think still, even if it is privately owned, if they're collecting federal funding, they have to have a federal contract. Now, part of that contract is that they have to abide. You cannot collect federal funding without following federal law and federal regulation. You can't.
Right.
So when you're a CPS agency and you remove children and you have so many children in your custody that you don't have enough foster homes to place those children in, and then you in turn house those children in a hotel room or in your CPS office, which is a violation of not just federal law, but it's a violation of your policies and procedures, you're now in violation. So if you're in violation of those regulations and laws in your contract, then you should be losing your contract altogether. And if you lose your contract altogether, your agency gets shut down.
Right. So that's what I'm talking about. Go ahead, Tyler.
Kim, you remember those 3 kids that kind of try to help save from the government and CPS and all that?
Mm-hmm.
So I got Senator Karen Tyson involved. So like what you're talking about with those private companies, there was one here in the state of Kansas that was called Saint something. It was some sort of Catholic name to it. But anyway, she went and talked to all her center friends, and they cut the funding for them, and so so it pretty much went back into another system. But that worked for me to be able to shut that part down, but it still had the judge and the district attorney that were re-abusing these children over and over again. And that never got resolved. So like that kind of goes with your multi-layer step, because that's how I got those kids, because I caught them in the process of getting recycled back into the system and getting re-abused by their mom and dad again. So that's something that happens. So I'll just shut up and let you go talk.
And I want to put a side note out there that I don't know that what Kevin and I do is productive or unproductive. Our intent is to treat our local problem, which happens to be the Catholic Church, and the most financially and politically powerful sect of that Catholic Church in my area, like they treat people that go to Planned Parenthood, considering the atrocities that they allow to happen within their walls. So a lot of the things that everybody in this live is doing is a lot more productive than what Kevin or I are doing. We're more of like an annoying loudspeaker and returning the shame and energy, but 10 out of 10 for everybody doing like the actual work that's making
interrupt you. I don't want to interrupt you and I don't want to be rude, but please don't diminish your work, what you're doing. Don't ever be negative with that. Even the smallest voices matter. You know, you got big voices, you got small voices. Don't ever diminish your work.
Oh, no, I'm not diminishing mine. I just want to make sure that the credit is given where it is and that I am a loudmouth and
you deserve absolute credit for that. So good job.
Let alone what y'all are doing, which is making actual changes. So
the reason I believe in your work, just after like we talked about it during a live, but you know what I mean? Like I don't know more about it than what I've talked to you about, but the reason I admire it and am even calling it out is because like a lot of people discount the power of local action. Meaning we look at this big beast of corruption, right? And there's like all these different segments of it. So even like all the bad things in the church, in the Catholic Church and this and that. When we try to like, you can't fit that all into one bite, right? But you can take out little bite-sized chunks of it. There's a lot that can be done. So again, like awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate. When you're raising that awareness in the church, I have so much connection to this work, to this concept, because those children who are still suffering, they don't know often that it's wrong. They often don't have an advocate or one strong person to like step in and be like, I got you, I see you. You know what I mean? Those children not only feel alone, they often are alone. And their entire world is, you know, twisted in a way that makes them feel shamed and all these things. So you guys being those strong advocates from the outside, and again, targeting this very specific problem in your specific community, we don't allow the bad guys to get away with doing bad things to children anymore. That's I'm going to speak for everyone in this one stance. You know what I mean? We should not be quiet about that. So that type of awareness within that type of community, it's powerful. And it also puts a spotlight on them. And I promise you, it is reducing the predator's ability to operate. That matters. And empowering children and the survivors in ways that can't even be quantified in words. So like, yes, I'm all about like, let's be aware, but let's also take action. You guys have been showing up there consistently, and I know it's making massive change in that community. So again, thank you for your work. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, you know, the Catholic Church in general, you know, I'm a very spiritual person. I mean, shoot, I'm wearing Yahweh's hoodie right here on my heart. So, you know, I'm very in tune with that. And I agree with everything you guys are saying. The churches in general are being weak. They're a bunch of lukewarm believers. You know, they go there to get their cherries and their weekly say I did something that week type thing. You know, but they hear this evil that we fight against, but they sit there and do nothing with it. They're supposed to be the spiritual leaders that fight this evil. They should be in the front line. We should be behind them, not the other way around. And the Catholic Church in general has got something up its sleeve because it's got a lot of history of child abuse. You know, I don't know if you see that. I'm also Native American. So, you know, the boarding schools, all that type of stuff, you know, that happened to a lot of children. And there's a lot of kids still buried in unmarked graves. So, you know, if you guys really want to see, you know, some of the things and use something as fire, that would help out, I believe. You know, talking about the boarding schools and all that, you know, we're the church leaders on that. So, all right, I'll shush.
100%. I feel a similar way. And obviously we're all generalizing because obviously there are some good people in every single blah, blah, blah. Yes. Okay. We're generalizing, but I see it similarly to the politicians. There's a different level of what I would call responsibility to the elected officials whose job it is to protect and serve, right? They really should be solving these problems and they have the power to. But I see the majority of the church in the same way. Again, awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate, and the public can be very helpful in that way. And also, there are some parents that truly don't think about this place of faith or place of God that is actually quite harmful for their children. So like, hopefully we can inform parents to make better decisions and be more protective of their children and not just trust these entities because we're supposed to be able to. But I'm also not expecting the bad guys to fix themselves. Just like the people in Washington will not arrest themselves, I don't see the church leaders, the ones who are corrupt and hurting kids, I don't see them as being, compelled to change their ways. But I do see us calling them out as beneficial. And I don't think any of us should be shamed into silence or compliance or just, be numbed so that we look the other way. However, it needs a strategic approach and a very targeted approach. Like, for example, they're doing something really specific in their community in NOLA. Like there's this whole specific issue that's a lot more to unpack. They're doing a lot about it there, and they're not letting them get away with it. On a local level, we need to do the same with politicians. On the state level, we need to do the same, and on a federal level. But a lot of people shy away from like the big, bad, scary government without realizing that there's a lot they can do locally in their small town, like on your HOA board, to the sheriff, to the mayor, to like your local elected officials. You know how many sheriffs I've looked in the face and be like, "Hi, nice to meet you, I'm Kim. What's your plan to solve child trafficking?" You know what I mean? Like, I don't have fancy words for them. I have a very simple question. What's your plan to combat child trafficking in your community, county, whatever? And I get one of two reactions every time. It's either this like, you know what I mean? Like, got you. And or sometimes, rarely though, but it's like, oh, like, I don't know what I need help. You know what I mean? Like, I want to, I don't know where to start type thing. So the point is that we keep pressing them for the sake of, solutions. Like, we're not just here to be bullies, right? But it is about holding these people accountable. And we do have the power to do that, especially on a local level. Spreading awareness and helping parents or guardians' hands could make a big difference. People don't know how to combat. 100% agree with you. There are a lot of preventative things, and there are a lot of rights and actions that can and should be taken. Malibu was talking about a little bit earlier, but like, if people are targeted by corrupt entities, having more education out there about what their rights are and what the correct actions are. Like, not everyone can hire a lawyer, etc., but like just giving them, I call it a blueprint, meaning like there's always a template that needs to be customized for the exact situation, aka trauma informed, right? But knowing the basics of it and giving people a better understanding, whether it's the digital world, whether it's with actual like stranger danger, predators, etc., and these predatory government entities.
Here's a better thing.
Cut off the money
do
supply.
we, the people, but why do we, the people, allow a government entity to have so much power that someone who is not even a law enforcement officer can take somebody's kids away?
Boom. That.
Like, I think we've forgotten that we, the people, control our government.
Or are supposed to. They're supposed to.
That's the way it's supposed to
be. Thing. But we are electing people into office over and over and over again, expecting different results. And I'm pretty sure the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. So does that mean the entire population is just insane? Insane? Because that's what it means to me.
A little bit of both. Go ahead.
Well,
that's the whole entire thing about that, Beck, is that everything is revolved around consent, right? If we consent to CPS, okay, so if CPS agency walks up and knocks on my door, if I don't know my rights, and that's a huge part of my platform, is that I am teaching people their rights. I'm trying to wake them up to start learning their rights. If they come and knock on my door and I don't know that I can protect my rights by saying, hey, I don't want to communicate, I don't want to contract with you, I don't need to answer your questions, then they're going to walk all over me. Just same thing with the police officer. It's not the police officer's job to inform you of your rights. It's your duty to know your rights. Is the police officer, is he bound by his oath of office to uphold the Constitution? Yes. If he tramples on your constitutionally protected rights, does he lose his qualified immunity? Yes. But you, as an individual, have to be knowledgeable in your own rights to enforce that. It revolves around consent. Everything revolves around consent.
100%. They're not there. They're part of their job or whatever you want to call it. And their purview is not to, I mean, they can make you aware of it, but you need to. That's perfect. You need to know. A lot of people don't even realize that they do have these rights, but they're not aware of it. They need someone to either educate them on it. So it's not that they're dumb or stupid. They're misinformed or uninformed, not uneducated, uninformed. So yeah, you're right. And by the way, government isn't sovereign. The people are. So that's where that comes in. There's more power behind that than people realize. They're like, oh, like what Kim and Becca and other people had mentioned. Forgive me if I leave anyone out, but you're hitting it. That's exactly it right there. You see this big bad, it's very ominous and it's very daunting because it's the government. And you cut off that money supply, easier said than done. That's where it's going to be the most dangerous, but it's going to have the most and quickest impact, in my opinion. How to go about doing that, we're still working on that, but that's where you're going to get their attention and quickly. But as far as being sovereign and knowing your rights, yeah, they're not there. I mean, unfortunately, I'm just speculating, but they're counting on you not knowing. I mean,
Exactly.
honestly, I mean, I hate to say that. I hate to say I come from a military and police family, but I'm going to tell you right now, that's not something that's, oh, well, in case you didn't know, that way I trample your rights just by accident. Here's a card. Here, read this real quick. No, this isn't Miranda or anything else. And then by the time you find out, it's already a little bit too late. So yeah, you're right. You need to be informed. And the people that are informing and helping others to do that, to know, there's one thing to be aware of it, but it's another thing to be able to exercise it as well. So you're either waiving your rights or you're asserting them, but you need to know what they are to make an informed decision. That's all I wanted to say about that.
But I also think that a lot of that too is like when you're in the middle of those conversations, it's a lot of people are very fearful of saying the wrong thing, so they just comply. It's not that they don't know what their rights are. It's a fear tactic.
Yeah, but again, truth creates confidence, meaning when you know your rights, you have less fear of the unknown and the scare tactics are less effective.
Bingo.
To your point,
when you're just say lawyer every time. I want to say something though, backtrack to what Becca had said about people voting it in. Yes and no, because I live in Louisiana. I live in a very red zone where I'm at personally. I don't know if y'all can hear the background noises, but that is a barge that's going by on the bayou. How red I am. And we have an election this Saturday that there is no early voting on, and there's only, in my parish, there's only 2 voting locations available, and it's at a, excuse my language, it's at a fucking feed store 45 minutes away from my house, and I'm not even the furthest point of what my parish includes. Our election group people that do the polling and stuff have said that they expect no more than 300 people per voting location site this Saturday. So it's not just because people vote in the same people over and over. It's gerrymandering and voter suppression and active acts like this where we're having to drive a significant amount of distance out of our way to go to a feed store, like a farmer's market, not even a farmer's market, but like where you go pick up stuff for your cows and pigs and your farm, to go vote with a paper ballot for a very important election that has to do with the coastal restoration, which again is not the conversation that we were having, but I just want to say it's not just people voting for the same thing.
Yeah, but I do agree that, like, we the people, I'm obviously generalizing, and obviously this is like easier said than done type stuff, but the idea is that the government is supposed to work for we the people. So when we the people complain about our government not doing the job, the way I like to play devil's advocate is like, if you were the CEO of a large corporation and your management team was like literally, laundering money, stealing from you, everything was on fire and nothing was effective, would you be like, oh, my management team sucks, I just really, or would you fire them and fix the problem, right? So I think we the people need to reclaim our power in the sense of stop waiting for a new hero to be voted in, or stop assuming that once I vote, then I've done my yay and then the hero will go save us. You know what I mean? We outsource a lot of our power to these entities and politicians that make nice sounds with their mouth on the screens that we watch. But then we sit back and allow them and act like we are powerless in the face of this corruption. And that's like from the federal level all the way down to, again, you know, I'm talking about being a child trafficking survivor training law enforcement. And people are like, oh, but law enforcement is bad. No, they're corrupt. You can't work with them. They're evil. And you're like, hi, I'm stepping in to help solve problems because there are problems. So I don't think like in my case, you know, the solution is not to sit back and complain about the problem. The solution is to not tolerate these problems and step in a way that can help fix it. You know what I mean? So like, I tend to think the system is intentionally designed for corruption. The voting and the elections and the politicians, like it's all pro wrestling to me. I'm serious. It's all theatrics to me. Like I don't buy it. I don't watch it. I don't, you know what I mean? You're allowed to be entertained by it, but you're not allowed to take it seriously in 2025. With that premise in mind, like again, it's a show. You're allowed to be entertained, but you're not allowed to like actually assign your rights away to this show as if we don't have the power. That's what they want us to believe, right? Then they use these these techniques to distract us with these like shiny toys or this little, you know, crazy stuff that's happening on the screens that we watch. People feel powerless, and I am just wired a little bit differently, but like I have no special qualifications other than the fact that I survived 20 years of trafficking, which is no small feat. The point is that like I don't have any special qualifications to be here, and it really shouldn't be me. I'm just intolerant of this evil. I'm a civilian with a petite smile, you know what I mean? Like I have a dark humor, and I can say whatever the fuck I want to these politicians and not let them get away with shit. But like, I don't have any special powers that allowed me to do this. I just have the will. Every single person on this panel, like none of us have special abilities or edges. We've either seen too much, been through too much shit, and we're just unwilling to tolerate it, right? So I'd love to see that response from more Americans. I'm not expecting it from the majority. It's always, historically, it's always been the minority. It was what, like 2% in the Revolutionary War? Meaning I'm not expecting it to be the masses. That's no longer even my approach, much less my expectation. I am here to find the people that are willing to be aware, step one, and step two, that are willing to act. I've seen fear be one of the main obstacles when people are honest about why aren't you, they feel powerless. They think they're powerless. There is an emotion of fear that is holding them back. Yes, there are definitely people with lived experiences who have been severely traumatized and victimized that are just like done with it, you know what I mean? Just completely demoralized and don't know what they can do. There's all kinds of reasons and you know, things happening here that holds people back. But on the real, if we the people were to unite our efforts, like stop falling for the distraction and start focusing on what matters, we could move the needle in some significant ways. I'm just not expecting them to do it for us.
But they're not going to.
100%.
Hey, Kim, can I say
If
one thing?
anything, they're going to move it in the wrong
Go.
direction.
100%. Go ahead, Malibu.
So my last word, my last final thought before I have to go. It's been great to be here on this panel. I appreciate you having me here. Couple things that I have to say real quick. Everybody, this is why I push education. This is why I push on my channel. And if you haven't seen my channel, please go check it out. Knowledge is power. I say it in almost all of my videos. Knowledge is power. Get some, right? If you know your rights, you are powerful. You are far more. Parents in general dealing with CPS corruption, you have no idea how powerful you truly are. No idea. If you just learn your rights and enforce them with confidence, you know, switch your mindset from fear to I'm the one in power, right? Because here's the fact. Now, I highly encourage you to go research this, but I believe in this with all my heart. Our government officials are not corrupt. Want to know why? Because we, the people, are the government. They are our representatives. They are called actors for a reason. They are state actors for a reason. They are our representatives. We, the people, are the government. They represent us. So our representatives are corrupt. Our representatives are misled. Our representatives are the bought ones who are misleading us as the sovereigns, as the people who are in control. We need to realize who's really in power here.
100% agree with you.
But other than that, you guys, I got to go. Have a great night. Great to be here.
Yeah, have a great night, Malibu.
Let's continue this discussion. I look forward
Good
to
one.
it again. Yeah, just real quick, I want to hear from you. I don't know how to say your name. Yasknet Goddess?
Yes,
Awesome.
you
um,
could just call me Yes. I
yes.
was down, kind of listening. This particular situation here, I think all of you guys' points, all of you guys' views are absolutely correct. Reinventing something that they already have in place, trying to force them to take accountability, right? And do right by our families and by our children, they aren't going to do it. And we could talk till we turn blue and purple in the face. And I realize, honestly, it doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't mean anything to them. When you begin to go and file paperwork, that black and white, that's what means something to them. I realize that, and I speak from experience when I say what I'm saying, because I don't talk about this much, but just a bit of insight. When I was younger, I was in foster care from the age of 10. Me and 15 of our children in the family from the age of 10. Some of us came back in early and some of us didn't. I was one of the ones that came back in late. I went from foster home to foster home. I've been in homes that have you under the same religious, I would like to say, preference or beliefs, and it was nonstop them shoving it down your throat. You went to sleep to it, you woke up to it. There was no downtime during the afternoon, okay? It was just nonstop round the clock. So I understand all the I would like to say all you guys' traumas and things that you've gone through. And I just want to say that I feel like when I saw a bill in reference to the Child Protective Act that Malibu is working on. And I think that's a huge, huge, huge thing because, as you stated, Defender, they don't have anything. And I mean, absolutely nothing. Because I've combed through with a fine comb myself. Because, sometimes when you see things, you're like, oh my God, am I crazy? So I've gone through with a fine tooth comb myself to figure out is this something that may have just happened, under different unfortunate circumstances, or is this a thing? And apparently it's a thing, and nothing's done about it because there's nothing in place for us. As the child going through a situation like that, there's nothing in place for us. The laws that are in place are meant to suit the agencies. They're not meant to help the children or that family, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So for me, I feel like if we begin to spread awareness, and when I say awareness, just letting people know, like you're already doing, what their rights are, letting them know you have a voice. You actually have one. You can speak out when they tell you, no, ma'am, or no, sir, be quiet, or, oh, if you have an attorney, because they'll tell you quick, no, 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 just be quiet. Don't speak on this. That's the time when you do speak on it. You make your voice heard. You make sure that your standpoint is known to whoever it is that you need to make it known to. The mere fact that they're trying to hush you and make you be quiet, that should raise a lot. It should tell you a lot, and I think that with what you guys are trying to do, especially you, Defender, I think that's a beautiful thing. You're never going to get an answer, honey. I can guarantee you that. Not a straight one anyway. on what do we do with our children when you rescue them, or what do we do with our children long term when you pull them out of a abusive, actual abusive, not one that you deemed abusive, an actual abusive family, right? Or just any place, period, right? And we put them into this agency's care. What do we do now? What is the long-term plan, right? What do we have in place for this child? Because this child is going to grow, okay? What do we have to make sure that this child, one, gets the mental health that they need, therapy, and then what do we have to ensure that this child is going to have a successful life?
100%.
What do we have in place for that?
Yeah.
Nothing. And they'll never give you a straight answer on that.
Yeah, I've stopped expecting helpful answers to most of these questions, but that's also why I've stepped in to create those things that don't exist. So survivor homes to medical triage centers for visitor rescue to the actual rescue ops and task forces themselves. Like, obviously, it's not just me. It's me finding the people that can and will and working with them and being creative and getting the funding and, you know what I mean? All the dogs and pony show here. But it's because I'm so intolerant of it, and it's because, like, I can't play stupid that hard. You know what I mean? Like, being real, like when I'm not talking about the law enforcement agent that doesn't have an answer for that question. I'm talking about the system that is designed. Like, are you kidding me? We have more shelters for animals in this country than humans. And I'm a big, animal lover, but like, I just can't play stupid that hard. You know what I mean? That's just ridiculous. I also have way too much lived experience where, I won't even get into it, but like 20 years of trafficking lived experience where, I won't even get into it, but like 20 years of trafficking all over the world. Like, I was born in Brazil. I was raised mostly in Brazil and Mexico, even though my parents are American, blah, blah, blah. The point is that the system, law enforcement, the politicians, the American government, foreign governments, they failed us at so many levels. There were so many opportunities where they said they rescued and nothing happened, and kids are no longer alive because some of the actions that were taken. You know what I mean? Like, I know too much, but I know enough to know that they're not going to fix themselves. And it's also not that I think that like I'm the savior to this problem, but I do find a little bit of dark humor in being a petite smiley female that's calling out people that really should be the ones to solve this problem. You know what I mean? And it's also my lack of ability to accept stupid answers to those questions that allows me to keep following up with these politicians and blah, blah, blah people that are in the way. You know what I mean? So it takes
That's their
humor and creativity.
I agree.
Well, it's crazy. It's still outwardly crazy to me that a law enforcement agency can identify a trafficked individual and have absolutely zero plan of what to do with them after they walk them out the door.
But again, the system, like, because I agree with you, and in overthinking all of this, right? It's not, okay, beyond it, like, it's not their job. It's supposed to be someone else that does that. Like, honestly, we don't want law enforcement to then, you know what I mean? Take that other side of things on. Like, that's not within their jurisdiction, and it shouldn't be. It's just that other party doesn't exist and or is inherently corrupt. You know what I mean? So from the shelters to the safe houses to the blah, 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 like all the people we know that are collecting millions of dollars in the name of housing and supporting survivors and either not doing shit or just like completely exploiting the problem, collecting millions of dollars, not solving the problem, not helping the victims. Very passionate about it, but again, it's like it makes no sense except if we are to not justify, but understand that it is intentional. That is the only way. Does that make sense? There's no logical answers to all these broken system questions that are very logical questions. The answers make no sense unless we accept that it is intentional. Then we can start from not only a correct premise, but then we're not spinning our wheels being like, let's go tell Washington about bad things because then they'll fix it. Like, you know what I mean? I wish it, no. So it doesn't make it easier, but it does mean it's up to us.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And your stance is completely correct, right? And it's sad to say, but that is the actual way that you should look at it, right? Because law enforcement is there for just that, right? And so once they've, come to whatever situation that's going on, they get these children, right? Or they're helping this family, this mom or dad, whoever it is, right? There's kids involved, obviously. And so once they get there, who's the entity in place there to help? And what they have is children's services, or just depend on the age, right? They have the shelter. It's one or the other, right?
Yeah.
Or you can go through children's services if it's a child, of course, and then they're going to put them into the little kitty shelters. But at the end of the day, that's another piece of this, the shelters, right? They get paid per everybody. And I do mean the actual body, right? That comes into their shelter. Okay. A lot of times they don't do much. They don't help. You know why? Because they've already gotten what they need. Once you come into that shelter, once they get your social security number, they have what they need. They have that funding.
Right.
And once they receive it, they no longer care to help.
Yeah.
If I'm being 100% honest with you,
Yeah.
there's nothing that holds them accountable. Because they're a partnering agency to children's services, right? Because what people don't understand is, even though there's different departments, different agencies, these agencies are paid by the governmental assistance from children's services. Therefore, these agencies answer to children's services. So the person, the agency that we would need to hold accountable for all the different mishaps, I want to say, that's going on, would be children's services, right? But people don't know that. So then we go after the wrong agencies, trying to hold them accountable, and we get nowhere. And they'll keep deflecting, throwing it off. I'll give you a call back. You know how it goes.
Right. It's way too
And that's
easy to
why.
put off in the side in the
And I feel like that's it goes back to something I heard you say earlier, Defender, when you were talking about starting, some kind of organization to the effect of, when we get children, right, we can put them here and know that they're going to be safe. They'll receive what they need in order to have a successful quality of life. And if we can reunify them with their families, that too, that's always great. But sometimes that doesn't always happen.
usually.
And that's something that we would literally have to start ourselves, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
because they aren't going to do it.
Yeah. That's
And I
why
think it's important to note that I think the majority of children trafficking victims would not be reunited with their families.
right.
I mean,
Yeah, and I agree with you.
It's an
I
important-
agree with you, because this agency that we're talking about, okay, put into another perspective, right? We saw our own president. I don't want to say too much on your platform, try and follow me. So we saw our president go after several different departments and agencies. It could just be me, but did anybody notice he did not touch that one?
I sure did. Did anyone else notice? Like,
Okay.
not sending anything up to prevent it. I don't know if you caught it, but like a rhetorical question I ask people a lot to rock them into the truth, to understand the reality that this is intentional, is why don't we have a federal agency that is dedicated to combating human trafficking? I'm not even talking child trafficking. Like, we have agencies for water and education. Those agencies have task forces. They train here. Like, for what? For water. Anyway, we have the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms. They raid bars, and they set up stings where they send in they send in someone that is like barely underage, and, oh, you sold them a drink, we're gonna raid you. Like, I'm sorry, where's all this energy for children? Rhetorical question, right? So again, there's all these layers of the problem, but the understanding, like, to me, the foundation is the problem. We're generalizing. The problem is intentional. That means logical solutions don't apply. It also means we can't rely on the people enabling the problem to solve the problem. It is not beneficial for them.
I
They're not
agree.
incentivized to solve it. That means we cannot involve them. And that means it's up to us. I'm not asking for anarchy. I'm asking for like organized solutions. But on the law enforcement side, like, this is summarizing so much here. I've done a lot of undercover work with law enforcement, pretending to be a child on the internet, basically being the decoy. But the point is that I've seen too much. So I work a lot in the tech world, trying to fix all those problems because that's retarded. But also on the law enforcement side, I've seen way too much incompetence and all these other words, right? And like, we're not even talking about the worst of the worst, but the point is that, like, I just can't. Okay, so for many years ago, I was like, law enforcement needs better training. I saw that side of things. I didn't see the full lack of training at that time. Now I work at this facility where all the law enforcement train. It's just kind of ironic that I fell into this, but all that to say, I'm in a position now where I can offer training to law enforcement, and where they're asking for that training, I don't instruct on tactical training, right? I instruct on how to identify predators and, people that are harming children. I'm using very nice words here. Tactics for identifying the red flags in high risk environments. Like, I'm literally first correcting the premise, but the point is that I'm focusing things that are within their jurisdiction. I'm not focusing on like, now you have to take care of all these kids that you rescued, because like, that's, you know what I mean? That's a separate and necessary problem that needs to be solved. But on them, it's more about guidance on trauma-informed response and victim interviewing. So I'll give you like a basic example, right? When we raid a building, let's say it's some drug bust or just whatever's happening here. We raid a building, there's 50 people. Let's not assume that all these people are criminals. Let's assume some of them might be victims. There's a lot of humans here. We don't know what's happening. Let's find out what's happening. So instead of using violent interviewing processes, let's buy them a slice of pizza and a Sprite and sit them down and treat them like friends, because you'll probably get much more helpful information so that you could understand what's happening here and see who needs to be helped. Find out who it gets more extensive, but like all these people have been told you're the bad guys. If you come in and act like the bad guys, you're reinforcing that belief and they're not going to tell you shit. Alternatively, you know what I mean? So like these are very obvious things, but they're like, oh, that makes sense. They have informants for, actually, Becca, I really want your feedback on this. They have drug trafficking informants, right? So like, let me zoom out. We're talking about child trafficking specifically in America, which has all shapes and forms. But a lot of times these agencies have this like military operator mindset. A lot of nonprofits also have this like former whatever type of high level military guy that comes in with this military mindset trying to combat this, I'm oversimplifying, street crime. And that's not how that works. Like you are in a different body of water. You do not understand the, let's call it tactics or like how to get information from these streets. So that's like one of the premises, but expanding further. Another big premise that I'm working very hard to correct with law enforcement is separating sex trafficking from sex work and prostitution. There's definitely overlap in exploitation. There definitely can be. But like, first of all, let's focus on children. That's objectively, like, let's just start there so there's no debate. But also, let's not target sex workers. Why? Because that's like not a big problem. Law enforcement's pretty sick of that stuff anyways, right? But also, all right, so when you make a bus, let's say there's a bunch of women, we don't know who's a victim and who's there consensually. What if these women who are there consensually, what if they knew that like you're not going to be a bad guy and come after their business model and treat them terribly, right? And not help anybody? What if you treated them like friends, but like actually, I'm not saying to manipulate them. I'm saying like, what if you were actually to like be nice to these people? What if these women who are choosing that lifestyle, if you could gain their trust and show them you're actually like not there after their business model, you're there to help people and you're there to find the children who are being exploited. There are definitely women on the streets. This is pretty crazy to say this, but there are definitely women on the streets who would rat on their competition. The guy selling children, right?
Most definitely.
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes. That could be a very effective model. So now we've addressed multiple things. We are, I forgot what his title is. It's the chief or something. Anyway, the high-ranking law enforcement guy in Harris County. Harris County is like very personal to me because I was trafficked there for 4 years of my childhood. Anyway.
Me too, girl. Me too.
Yeah, I'm like all over that shit. Because anyway, one of the commissioners or someone was like, we are now shifting our focus away from sex work and towards rescuing children from trafficking. And I was like, yay! But seriously, most of these trafficking efforts are directed at sex workers. You're not helping anybody. Like, believe me, you're not helping anybody, but we're also like not even touching trafficking. So all that to say, lots of correcting the premise, but then lots of giving them information and tools that to me are just very intuitive, logical things, but that are just not part of their protocol. But when they try these things and they're effective, and now we found the real bad guy that actually is doing bad things to children, now we start getting some traction in a way that, hear me out, makes them look good, so that more public support is raised for their department, agency, whatever. Now we can expand these task forces. Does that make sense? Like, we're understanding what everyone needs in order for things to happen and who we need to make look good and who needs to say the sounds with their mouth on which screens and what.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But like, to me, these are very basic things. They're just not in place. So like, we're not even at the level of like all the other layers that need to be addressed at all. On the spectrum of intensity, like we're over here. However, these basic fundamental things need to be in place, need to be spelled out and spoon-fed, because in the world of law enforcement, like many other things, it's very archaic. And unfortunately, things don't really change unless there's a financial incentive or somebody is unalived and then they are forced to change the tactic. That's how that works.
You know what's interesting to me
Correct.
about the whole situation, though, is like they act like our traffickers were like so elusive and that we were so hidden, and we weren't. Like
every single
right in front of their damn faces. Like that's what is mind-boggling to me, is that people are like, oh, this can't possibly be happening. I'm like, dude, I can go take you around the corner and show you where it's happening. Like, it's not hard to find these people, but they don't know what to look for.
100%. They don't know what to look for. Like, that's what I'm saying. There's so much more that's needed, but the basic fundamental things are just like not even there. So, like I said, I'm really like, shouldn't be the one.
It's still like, I've been doing some deep diving like into situations in my past, right? And like, they're comical to me at this point that like,
Yep.
no one thought that something was wrong.
100%.
Like, I mean, we, on many occasions, we're inside restaurants or inside of a public place with one person, one male, and 4 or 6 young females with one male. And none of us look like we belong together.
100%. I've told that story before, and I actually realized that truth when I was on a live with you, like, I don't know, 3 years ago, when I was like, I was on the streets in Houston, Texas, from the age of 10 to 14, every single week, weekend, etc., like multiple days out of the week, every single week for about 4 years, from the age of 10 to 14 years old, like obviously a child. Not one person, much less law enforcement officer, had the awareness to stop and being like, why the fuck are you out here alone, and what are you doing, and where are your parents, and why are you not in school, and what is going on here? Not one person asked if I was okay.
Not a single person. Like, we talk about the fact that in the whole 10 years I was trafficked, not a single person ever asked me if I was okay. And I mean, and not even just like people on the street, but let's face it, like, I took my clothes off for money. So, like, you saw my body. You saw the bruises. Like, there was no hiding them.
Right. And many
yet
would have helped just by asking questions. So, like, we have all these, this whole system needs to be invented, and I agree with that. But, like, there's not even a foundation yet. I'm obviously generalizing, but in most of these institutions, there's not even a foundation. Let's build the roof once we get the walls up, at least,
And like, I'm not justifying
I was gonna
like
say that
paying for having an intercourse with somebody. Like, I'm not justifying that. But if you choose to do that, at least be aware of the situation you're walking into. Like, I was obviously a child. Like, there was no denying that.
Yeah.
I was going to break in for 1 second. I remember we covered this extensively on 1 or 2 shows. I believe we were live. We were on the air for one, Kim. We were several times, but I remember, and you were actually in real time while we were live. There had to have been over 100,000 listeners that time. I think you remember this. It was last May or June, where what are the telltale signs, like how to, like, don't necessarily approach them. You can make it worse. And I mean, you were letting people know, to the young lady's point right here, that, just be aware, like, just 2 seconds, something doesn't look right, something doesn't feel right, or whatever it is, and how to approach or not approach those situations, because obviously you don't want to make it worse, but to perhaps the little telltale signs that I wasn't even aware of. And I do recall covering that. It was a lot of people just were like wowed by the things that they should or should not do. And that's important, because you could possibly be saving someone right then and there, but when something goes sideways really quick, you could make it a lot worse. And that's scary, for not only myself, but for the child. Like what Becca was just saying, it could be like 5, 6 people. That doesn't seem like family. It looked a little out of place, whatever. It's okay. It's okay to be mildly curious, not paranoid, but you actually went over. We don't have to hit it right now, but I learned a lot from that, because I wasn't even aware of a lot of those things. And you put it in I don't know if it was a document, however you put it, I still have it, and I still refer to it now and then. That was huge. And I don't want to take away from the ladies talking, but that reminded me of that. One of the several that we did, that one last year, that was humongous, because people walked away with a lot of information, a lot of knowledge that can be applied, that will be helpful. And this reminded me of that. So I'll yield out, but that was it.
No, thank you.
It's very mind-boggling to me. And I mean, you can vouch for this, is how openly we were in society. Like, we weren't hidden. And I talk about this all the time about being hidden in plain sight, because we literally were in plain sight.
Exactly. You weren't hiding in a corner or they had you wait in the car. You were there like in a family restaurant, like sitting right there. I mean, amazing. Right under what you just said. You can't say it any better than that. Hiding in plain sight. You just nailed it.
Or like
That's exactly what it was.
Walking known tracks. Like, there are plenty of them in this country that are known areas for prostitution.
Yes.
And like, we would walk them on a regular basis. So why, as law enforcement who frequents these areas because they are known areas for that problem, not seeing the fact that there's children walking up and down?
Yeah.
They can't be that, like, they saw us. There's no way they didn't see us. They just didn't care.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That, first off, I want to say, Becca, I am so sorry you went through that, sweetheart. You too, Defender, because no girl, especially, no child, but no young lady should ever have to face, things like this. None. And it's all organized. And that's why they turn a blind eye and they don't say anything. Because remember, I told you I was in foster care from when I was younger. I was lost in the system. My family tried hard to bring us home. It was me and my brother. They got all the other kids. Me and my brother was left. We were lost in the system. And what they kept telling them is they didn't know where we were. Or they would tell them that the foster care people went on vacation. When we returned to the family, I was 16 years old from 10. And when I returned to my family, the only question I had was, why didn't you guys come for us? And they let us know we did. We tried. You were lost. They couldn't find you. They didn't know where you were. Imagine that. So it's organized. And it's not that they don't know. If they get a child and they can make more funds off of this child, they don't want to give you back. They don't want to give you back. And they'll do all that they can to try and keep you in this organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're not incentivized to actually help.
And in terms of that as well, I see it a lot. And I think that comes with the work that you're doing, Defender. I think it's awesome. You're kind of giving them a bridge there, because if you see something and it doesn't look right, okay, I'm a regular person, right? You're law enforcement. Speak up. Hey, young lady, you okay today? It don't take nothing to ask a question.
Exactly. So again, that's also like, it seems so obvious, but let's say it. It's a different response than treating them like a criminal. There's the understanding that this
Right.
might be a victim and might need help. Becca, did you know that the Bissonnette Bel Air strip is still a thing? Everybody is very aware.
What?
Yeah, so is Sepulveda Boulevard. Like, there's so many beach and ball. Like, I can name probably 100 of them that are still very active. Like, we could go there right now and there's girls walking it.
Right.
And the sad part about it is they keep saying that people say, oh, it's so hard to find the trafficker. Our traffickers were never far from us. If you follow the girls, you will eventually find the trafficker.
Absolutely.
Like, they're not hard to find.
Exactly. Just not incentivized.
And they're not looking. You're not looking because they're right there in your face every day. It's that same person that comes and picks up this group of girls and nobody says anything or thinks twice, or group of boys and girls. Nobody says anything. Nobody thinks twice because you think this is some sort of agency. Oh, maybe they're in a group home or who knows, right? Ask questions. You see something that doesn't look right. People need to ask questions.
Like the hotel operators. That also bothers me, and it will never stop bothering me. Like, how does a hotel let someone check in with 5 teenagers with them, and then you don't question that? Like, how does that work? How do you not question that?
Yeah.
And then you see traffic in and out of the rooms, and you still don't question it because, like,
exactly, like a big reading the situation. Like the thing is that when we talk about the signs and training stuff like that, it's difficult to give the exact parameters because is it a coach checking in with a soccer team? Do you see other parents there? Because to your point, like, it's not really normal for there to only be one adult, but like, okay, let's read the room. Are there a couple of adults and that look like team coach, parents, whatever, kids in uniform? Okay, maybe that's normal. Is there one adult with a bunch of kids, teenagers, whatever, and then you see a bunch of people going up to the room? Like, these things are pretty obvious. There are definitely situations that are less obvious, but the main premise here is people need to know what to look for and be willing to see what is very uncomfortable to acknowledge. Then they have to be willing to do something helpful. Those are like all different steps in this process. Now, most of us on this panel have a much better understanding, and let's even call it gut instinct, for analyzing what's going on in the situation. A lot of the public is either just like head in their phone, not truly like not looking, not aware, and or they just like, oh, I don't want to make the wrong call. It's not my business. I don't want to get involved. The way I oversimplify like this very difficult question of like, what do we look for? What are the signs? How do we know how the child being trafficked? Okay, generally, if you're a general like citizen that's just like a regular human being, you're not going to encounter some kid in a cage with chains. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be as obvious as you and I would like it to be. It's not going to be a kid asking you for help. It's not going to be a kid, you know what I mean? There's not going to be these obvious signs. There's going to be generally, I'm oversimplifying something that's very complex, right? Generally, it's going to be a feeling that something is off, like, something doesn't feel right. In whatever scenario you're in, there's that feeling, there's that gut instinct, and then there's you looking into it further. You could be from a distance, you could be just observing, you could act like a dumb stranger and just play dumb and ask questions. Like, what you're not doing is like, hey, I think you're a bad guy. What I encourage people to do, what I would do as a petite female, play dumb and ask questions. Literally just like, oh, the weather's so nice. Where are you guys going today? Are you doing anything fun? Like, just asking stupid questions to get a read on them, to get more information. You're collecting data at this point, right? Here's the worst case scenario. If you're wrong, in other words, like you think something might be off, you ask dumb questions, you get some answers, and you're like, oh, the kid's just throwing a fit and everything's totally fine. Bye then. You know what I mean? Like, oh no, maybe you're embarrassed and feel a little bit awkward and you can go about your day. Like, that's just let me smash the fear that like, oh no, what if I look dumb? That should not be consideration, right? But, and I'm also not acting people like regular humans just to like try to be a hero and be like, hey, bad guy, get away from her. Like, that's probably not going to be helpful either. So with the general public, I'm literally just like, observe the situation, try to collect information. If you can, play dumb and ask questions, or at least just observe actionable details that could help with an investigation. What do they look like? Describe them. What are they wearing? Their age, or their approximate age, what they're wearing, like different things about their features, etc., that you can describe. What's happening? There's one guy with 5 teenagers in a hotel room, and then there's a bunch of men walking up there like, oh, that doesn't seem right. You know what I mean? Observing and analyzing the situation can be helpful. Nobody's asking a regular citizen to kick down doors. A lot of people, though, like everything else, tend to overcomplicate this. Like, oh, I want to help save a child. I would rush into a building and like sound so heroic. It's not really how it works in the real world, though, right? Then there's, okay, whatever data you collected, now who are you reporting it to? Are you calling 911 and being like, there's a person and some kids and something feels weird and I hear the kids screaming, bye? Like, are you just kind of relinquishing the responsibility to law enforcement, hoping they'll follow up? I hope they will, but often they won't. Let's be real. And, to the person in the comments, the reason I've stepped in to help train law enforcement is because there is so much corruption and lack of understanding. There are so many problems. I'm unwilling to continue observing the problems without stepping in to help. So I wouldn't be stepping in if there weren't problems. That's kind of the whole point, right? That being said, when we report these things to law enforcement, let's not assume that they will just do their job. That's unfortunate, but it's true. We can also assume they're overwhelmed and under-resourced, et cetera, et cetera. That's not to make excuses. That's just to acknowledge the reality. So when we make these reports, we report to everybody that we can, all the tip lines and hotlines and all the different local and state authorities that we can. Then we keep checking in. We keep following up. We make sure they don't forget. Sometimes, if needed, we make sure the local media knows about the situation too, so that nobody can forget. Then people get it pissed off enough where hopefully we see some action. Like, that's the reality of the situation. It takes a lot of dark humor, a lot of patience, a lot of working creatively, you know what I mean? But like, that's real. I wish it was easier.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because like you said, you don't want to make the situation worse. And if there is something going on, we definitely don't want this person to get away with the children or the child, So that worst case scenario, like you said, hey, I look stupid for the day. Okay, I was wrong.
Right.
Big deal, right?
Right.
Laugh it. It's okay.
Right.
I'd rather be wrong and know these kids are safe than to just sit and see it happening and not do anything at all.
100%. That's
And I volunteer in a lot of different organizations, and I tell all children, it doesn't matter who they are, and I keep that friendly window. If there's ever something going on, something you want to talk about, hey, I don't care if I'm walking to my car. Why don't you run out and catch me? Walk up to me. It's okay. You know, but let them know it's okay to do that because some children are scared. Some people are like, oh, that's not my problem. A lot of times I find that too. I've watched it and I'm like, God, there could have been something wrong with that kid. You couldn't take 2 seconds just to see what they wanted, you know? And I'll hear sometimes even co-workers, hate to say it is what it is, and they're like, well, I'm off. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. It took no time
But
for
the
you to
reality
acknowledge
is,
that kid and just go ahead, Becky.
the
Becca?
reality is that unfortunately, we as a society are too fearful of being wrong. So when you fear being wrong, you don't open your mouth.
To be wrong and apologize later. Nothing for nothing, but really. I mean, it's a lot easier to ask for forgiveness on the backside than it would be to feel like shit and you could have done something and now that's gone. You might not ever see those people ever again. So I can't speak for
Right.
everybody, but I would say, you know what? I apologize. I am so sorry, and or whatever I had to say, and it would be genuine. But at least I would know.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
Right.
that's
But
what you're saying,
you
right?
feel
That they're
that way,
afraid to
but
be wrong. You know,
Yeah.
I
I'm not
don't
afraid to
think
be
that's
wrong.
the consensus of the general public, though. Like, we are in a society where
I know.
the majority of the general public is so afraid of offending somebody. The majority of the general public is so afraid of offending somebody in some way, shape, or form that instead of taking inaction, instead of taking action, it has bred inaction.
Action. Yeah, you're right. Well, ask Kim. Kim will vouch for me. I'm the last person that's worried about offending anybody. So I didn't get a name like the meme
Right.
machine for nothing. But then everybody is like that. And I understand that. I don't think I'm better than anyone else. I'm built differently. But I'm not saying you need more people like me. You just need more people to be not only cognizant of it, but just a teeny bit. And from what the other young lady said right here, that someone said that they were off duty. All right, that burns my ass. I'm sure it does for you too. Since when is there
It
an off
does.
duty for
I mean,
humanity?
it did.
Are you friggin' kidding me? I'm sorry. I go from being sad to being
I
mad. You know,
It was some
I
random
had-
day. It was like President's Day or something, and the law enforcement agency regarding a situation with a kid, they were like, "Sorry, it's holiday." Just what?
kidding
I
me?
had a law enforcement. Hold on, I had
Wow.
a I had a
Wow.
law enforcement officer, one of the sex crimes detectives in Las Vegas, Nevada. I asked them for help. He literally looked at me and said, I understand what you're going through, but I don't have the resources to help you, and walked away.
Oh my God.
Call somebody and you find somebody with the goddamn resources. Excuse my language. Not you.
Right.
I'm talking
You
about
have
them.
the duty
You don't
to
just
do so.
walk away. You took an oath
But
to help people. You
This
don't
was
do
a
that only
common
9 to
occurrence.
5.
Like, y'all don't understand. I was in contact with law enforcement in 27 states. 27 states.
Yeah.
Listen to you, maybe this would have went a little bit differently. I'm speculating, and I'm sorry. I just wish that someone needs to they gotta listen. You're not talking from a point of view of maybe you actually know. Kim knows, you know. These people in here know. Why don't they fucking listen? I'm sorry, it's rhetorical. I get it, and it's not the first time you've heard it.
Though.
But now that aggravates me, especially when I'm sorry, that sets me off with those as well. It's a it's a holiday,
think
and I don't have the
aggravates you,
resources.
like,
You shitting me?
I lost 10 years of my life. 10 years of my life in
Right.
literal modern day slavery because somebody didn't have the resources to help me, or no one cared to ask me if I was okay. Like, that's time.
It's not
time
even
is
within
the one
comparison.
thing in life that you can never
I
get
know.
back. I can never
I
get
know.
that time back. But what I can do is I can never
I
get
know.
that time back. But what I can do is make damn sure that
Right.
every day that I do my best to make tomorrow a better place for somebody else.
Exactly. That's
Yeah,
all
and
you
that's
can do.
something
I
that
wish
I
somebody
focus
would have
on as
listened
well.
to you then. If they only would have listened then. I don't want to make it worse, but no, I can't compare, nor do I. I can only sympathize. I can't empathize on that because I don't know what it's like. But you do. So all I can say is, well, whatever I can do to help, and I will. But no, there's no comparison. There's no way I would ever know the pain that you carry along with you, and many of you. It bothers me because I want to not feel the pain, but I want to be able to say, God damn, can't we just turn it back a little bit? If they just would have listened. But that's not going to make anything better, is it? So,
It's
but
not,
no, I can't
but
compare,
what we
nor
can
will I
do
ever
today
know.
is to make sure that no,
It's Go ahead,
But
Becky.
what we can do is to make child or not child, because some of those interactions I was no longer a child, but any trafficking victim, any, doesn't matter what age they are, should never get turned away by the people who are paid to protect us because they don't have the resources. That is the biggest cop out I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
I agree with you, and I feel like for there should be more in place, right? If this makes sense, and there is some things in place, but people just aren't aware of. You know, for anyone that's gone through these situations that we all have been through, there are things that are in place now. You know, if you've gone through that, there's no cap on it. There's no stipulation for that. You go back and you sue them. You hold them accountable, because that's how it stops. Nobody cares, right, until it's hitting you in the pockets.
That's
And that's
exactly
just
what I
what
was
I
saying before.
find.
You turn up, you hit them in
No,
the money.
nobody
That's where
cares. Yeah,
that's
nobody cares unless it's hitting you in the pockets. And I
And
realize
like
that
the
for this
unfortunate reality,
agency,
the the
diving into
unfortunate reality.
C, diving into CPS, I noticed that once upon a time, right? And I don't know if anybody remembers or not, but they used to be called DIFUS. You notice they still operate off the same premise, but the name of the agency changed. It changed from DIFUS to Child Protective Services. That's because they
correct.
got hit with too many lawsuits.
That is
But they still
100%
operate off the
correct.
same premise. You see what I mean? So I feel like, and not everybody knows the direction to take, which is why I say, each one teach one. Everybody don't know. But if you see one that's trying to learn, they want to know, they're in a situation, ask, hey, do you know? Because I do it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm one, and, I'm unapologetic. I'll be right at the courthouse, y'all. And I'll see something happen, and I'll say, ma'am, do you know your rights? Did anybody explain your rights to you in this situation? And I often find that they say no. My attorney told me to just sit and they'll take care of it, right? But the reality is they're not really taking care of it because they don't operate for us. They operate for that court. You get what I'm saying? So I take the time and I'll educate them really quick just to kind of set them on the right path so that they can understand you have a voice and you can do something about this, right? To fix your family or bring your family back together, whatever's needed, And I often do give out my number as well in case you need any extra information. I don't gatekeep, and I will help anybody that I can. It doesn't matter if you're an adult, a child, I don't care. If I can help, I will. If I see something that is wrong and doesn't look right, I don't care what you say to me. You can talk till you turn blue and purple in the face. It's not going to make a difference because I'm going to ask that person, are they okay? At best, I could be wrong, right? And there could be just nothing going on. So be it. But I'm going to ask. I refuse to just stand by and be idle while these things continue to take place right up under my nose, knowing full well myself what I went through and what these agencies actually do to people. It's not right.
100%.
And,
Get over
I
it.
could
You
check
would
what
have to be
happened to me
morally bankrupt to not ask and worry about if someone's going to be offended. I'm sorry. I can't wrap my head around that. I know you're telling the truth, but
That
it's just
grinds my
I cannot
gears.
believe. I cannot. Once again, you would have to be morally bankrupt to be able to walk away from that without a whim. Oh, it's not my problem. No, it is. You're right. It isn't. It's everybody's problem. I
like,
don't. Where is Jesus? I'm sorry.
That
That's
grinds
just
my
that
gears.
pisses
I
me
just
off a
can't.
lot.
Yeah.
Are you human?
to make
How
it
did you just say that to a person?
Way
Oh,
too
it's not my
fun.
problem. What do you mean?
Yeah.
well to
No.
make it
And
even worse
it's
is
your
like
duty.
now, like 10 years later, I've been free from traffic, and Super Bowl Sunday will be my 10th anniversary. Thank you, Jesus, for that. But in that time frame, like I've gotten 3 associates, 2 bachelors, I have a dual master's. Like I have well educated myself. I have been, like
Mm-hmm.
gainfully employed. But because of those interactions with law enforcement, I still have a felony on my record that no matter what I do, I cannot get expunged. Like I have reached out to everybody you could possibly think of, and all I keep getting told is I need $10,000 for a retainer. Like I don't have $10,000 for a retainer, so it's still a barrier for like me moving forward in employment in my life, and it's also been a barrier for like doing things like seeking restitution or seeking like charges against the people who traffic me, because a lot of the agencies just they won't talk to me because of the fact that I have a record.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I find that's horrible as well. And I'm not gonna lie, I can understand where you're coming from, Becca, because me, myself, and I, domestic violence situation was not on me. I was the one being attacked and lied on, mind you. And even though they dismissed and even ignored these charges, I was still arrested for it, you know? And it still went on my record. And I had to dig deep, girl. I had to dig deep to find an organization or someone where I am that could help to get this off my record.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
See, the
So
thing
I
is
can
like
understand.
they're not in, I'm not in the state that they occurred in anymore. And I was sentenced to probation in that state and obviously never reported because I was being trafficked. So I technically have a bench warrant there. And they keep telling me that I just need to go turn myself in. Well, I'm not willing to do that unless they're willing to promise me that if I turn myself in, that I will be released on my own recognizances afterwards.
Right,
And
and not
they
help.
What
they
state
won't
is this
promise me
in?
that, so I won't go.
I know you told me before, but what state is this in?
Arizona.
Let me talk to you about that later. Kind of segueing this conversation, Sandy, if you can still join us, she was talking about a kid. Okay, so Sandy works with a group of people that does amazing work to not only find children who are being exploited on the internet and protect them, but it's like a whole thing of seeing too many things. Talking about a kid who is being charged because of what they did online. Is that correct?
Correct. In Ohio, so
Oh
the
my.
5-year-old child got explored herself online with her younger brother. One thing led to another, so we finally got him rescued or protected, and then that agency that we called saying they're going to charge the child for what she did on the internet and maybe going to prosecute her twin brother also for what he did because he had control of the device.
How old are these kids?
Wow.
This sounds
12.
so familiar
That's
because
what I
this
was
is
gonna ask.
They're 12.
no, but it sounds so familiar
Th-
because like the case that I have in Arizona is literally I got convicted of facilitation and control an illegal enterprise, which is legitimately them
They,
saying that I knew you were a drug dealer and I let you use my phone to make a drug transaction. That's layman's terms of what that is.
they basically going to charge them for self-generated CSAM.
Okay, this is, I mean, there's like beyond the broken system that like I just need to vomit real quick. This is a whole other issue in the online world. Most CSAM is created by children, meaning there are predators on the other side of the phone that are convincing them to create inappropriate images of themselves. So in these law enforcement investigations, there's no bad guy to go after because he convinced them, but he wasn't there making them. There's no child to rescue. Does that make sense?
Correct.
Situations are looked
Right.
completely upside down by law enforcement. Anyway, when it comes to children, like we should all objectively have a little bit of logic to understand that a child is very easily manipulated and predators are very strategic. So like, I don't even need to spell that out here, but wow, when it comes to actually charging them, like,
Yes, because these predators are.
I wanna
Go ahead.
because I wanna lose this thought. If I can ask, I wanna ask a question.
Go for it.
Right. So you said they were charging these little babies for
Correct.
this crap, and I see where you're coming from, defender, because the trafficker didn't do it themselves, so it was looked as though there is no crime, right? Because we're looking at it as, oh, these kids did it all on their own accord. Let me ask you something. You said you rescued these kids?
Correct. So they got safeguarded offline so we contacted their local law enforcement once we found the social media footprint and got them offline and got them safeguarded, quote unquote, offline. Their parents
Okay,
are
so
aware of what
the
happened, and the parents are trying to fight these charges against their kids because the parents had no clue what they were doing.
who's charging them? The state or who?
Yeah, they want to go up to the state charges, so it's going to start with the local level, and they want to make it up to Ohio.
I'll talk to you
okay,
about that more offline.
okay.
It's
Yeah,
like,
Yeah, I
and
was gonna say
then
because I don't want to say too much, but there's your defense, if that makes sense right there, because they were rescued. A child that's doing something all in their own accord does not need rescuing, right?
Well, like they
So we
harmed
have this
themselves.
documentation. We have this documentation that these children were rescued. You see where I'm going with this?
I don't know about rescued because it wasn't a trafficking situation, right? I'm learning about this from right now, so I don't know more about it. But the kid was made to
They
convince
were on a live streaming
exploit
app.
themselves, right?
Yeah,
Exploiting
they were
themselves
on a
on
live
live.
streaming
Right.
app and basically got told to expose themselves, so they did.
Okay, so got told.
Right, by
There
the trafficker.
No.
there was a predator in the comments. Like this isn't on a spectrum of intensity. There's all kinds of bad things, right? Trafficking is really specific. Online exploitation. That's like a very pretty word, right? But in law enforcement, we call it harmful images. Like when I'm pretending to be a child on the internet and some perv sends me pictures of his adult male genitalia,
Right.
it's called a harmful image. Okay. With child sex abuse material, I don't call it child pornography because it's not the same fucking thing as adult, you know what I mean? Anyway, child sex abuse material, most of it is generated by children. Obviously, they are convinced to. They're not just like coming up with this on their own, right? So some predator on the internet is grooming them or manipulating them into doing these harmful, inappropriate things. So Sandy just said it. They were told to, they were convinced.
They were basically live streaming, having a good time, and they said, "Hey, why don't you?"
So how is that like this is a rhetorical?
Oh, gotcha.
I know.
How are
Okay, I see what you're saying, Sandy. Right. And do we not know who that other person
No, because
that was coaching on the end?
no, because it's a predator, and we don't know where that predator lives.
Is
It can
there
be in the States.
like a
it could be
screenshot
in-
of that?
We have the username. We have the username, yes, and they can contact the platform in it, but it's in South Africa.
Right. There's some person on the internet. Like, okay, let's just play, devil's advocate, if you will. Like, I could understand some kind of like negligent parenting. I'm not saying it's the parent's fault, but I'm saying like I can understand some sort of consequence being like, yo, don't let your kids be supervised.
On the line.
But it still wouldn't be like something you would charge the parents for, though. You know what I mean? Like, some better safeguards are definitely needed here, but like that's not a criminal offense on behalf of the child. And this is all very fucking dark to say, but like they were exploiting themselves. They weren't like bringing on another participant.
So there are several cases right now pending in Oklahoma from high schoolers sending each other explicit photos that were minors, and they got caught up in it, and they charged them for every single one of those
Correct.
pictures. 1 count of possession of child pornography.
Yep, I've seen it. Yep. And then
And it was that they were exploited, like they were sending pictures of themselves to each other.
This is the kind of action in the wrong direction that we've been talking about.
And
It's
then
like,
I
hey,
have another agency.
Right, because
Always
what I'm
focused.
wondering,
right, but then I do these other undercover ops and things, and it's like we have to fight tooth and nail for this trafficker to get prosecuted. But y'all are out here charging children for what now?
Yep. And then I had another.
and my thing is this: is there,
Go ahead.
and Defender, you may know a bit more into this. So if we're trying to charge these children, my thing is this, right? This happened online on a platform, obviously, is what it sounds like. And so we can't get the exact person. We just have a username, and this is stationed in South Africa or Africa, wherever, right? Is there no way for them to go after that platform,
They could.
if that makes sense?
They could, but it's a very.
The
It's hard.
platform, it's hard as the short version. The platforms, okay, I'm big in the world of holding tech platforms accountable. It's like a whole creative thing, but it's a whole workaround because again, you got to make it a profit-driven incentive, and they're not going to do it otherwise. But the way that it works is that these platforms are just hosts, and they are not held accountable. What's the bill? It's SB 25 or whatever. Anyway, they are not held accountable for the things that people post on their platform. To be fair, what we are saying tonight, as an example, right? TikTok is not responsible for what we're saying here. Like if we went off with some real crazy extremist stuff, right? TikTok is not at fault for what we decide to say or do on this platform. If I did something inappropriate right now, TikTok is, you know what I mean? So there's that. However, when it comes to protecting children, here's why I go buckshit wild. that same community guidelines violation that you get when you message something or post something with a word or something that they don't like, and they're like, this is
Right.
community guidelines. Yeah, every single time I've been undercover with law enforcement pretending to be a child on the internet, I have to say my name in writing. I'm turning 12 next week, blah, blah, blah. These predators are sending all kinds of explicit words. We're not even talking about coded emojis. We're talking about words and images and videos and all kinds of things I can't unsee. The point is that it is so explicit and often so violent that my adult eyes have a hard time beholding this bullshit. The point is that that same technology that is being used to tell us we are violating their community guidelines when we say a word they don't like, that's not being used to protect children. And that's where
Right.
This is a solvable problem.
And I'm with you on that, because yes it does. And I'm with you on that, because is there not, and that's why I said what I just said, because they should be held accountable.
They should, but they don't.
And I believe that that's a good defense right there within itself, Defender, what you just brought up. Because if you have this in place, right, for us, right, if we violate anything, you are quick to send us a message, hey,
to identify harm.
But the thing is, these platforms are
Right.
making hundreds of millions of dollars every year. They are not going to be shut down.
So here's where, okay, this is my strategy for making profit-driven incentive for tech companies. It's like a whole extensive thing I've detailed on various podcasts, etc., but I'm going to summarize it here. But you'll get it. It's just, anyway, creative, because it has to be, right? The technology already exists that could eradicate this bullshit. And I'm talking about child harm and the predators on there, etc. Now we have to go back to the why isn't it being used? Why are they intentionally profiting off the exploitation of children? It's because they're making money on their user base. That's why these predators are not blocked. That's why these blah, 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 blah. Okay, profit driven. So back to, if they wanted to, they would have, they won't. We have to make it profit driven in order to get their attention. Now then, this is a little bit, like I said, creative, okay? The porn industry has invented the solution out of the need to moderate their platform and protect their business model. That's all I'm leaving it there. Like, I'm not here to promote them. I'm saying, like, porn is not my thing. I just don't care what consenting adults do. You know what I mean? Like, just not my thing. Anyway, when it comes to children being exploited, that's a totally different line in the cement. That being said, the porn industry has invented the technology to not only identify these things, and I'm oversimplifying something so extensive, they require all these different verification models that are very, like, facial recognition, government ID, banking information, like so much information on this user. Then, it's a lot to summarize. I'm just kind of speeding through it. But the point is that the technology works. It's been verified by third parties such as the DOJ's 30-month investigation, and NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, publishes an annual report. Specifically the company that owns Pornhub. They own a bunch of other porn sites. I don't know their names. Anyway, their technology works, and their platforms, all of them, do not have child sex abuse material identified by NCMEC in their annual reports. Contrast that to fucking Facebook had 17.8 million instances of child sex abuse material, followed by Instagram, followed by Google, followed by WhatsApp, followed by it's either Twitter or TikTok, and then Snapchat. So the point is that those big offenders are not being talked about. But here's the point. The technology exists. The porn industry had to invent it because, like everything else, a lot of people didn't want to work with them. That's why they came up with the first, for example, live streaming videos, credit card processing, etc. They had to make it themselves. It's working, it's very effective, and they have made it available for free to law enforcement. The technology, it's proprietary, patented, etc. to them. They've made it available for free to law enforcement. That has helped the investigation process, the data analyzing, building cases, like, it has done incredible things. I can't even summarize that, but like, it can do what would take 180 days in about 4 hours. Amazing. Anyway, also, they are offering to license that technology to other tech platforms. For I don't know what they're charging, but the point is that they can pay. So here's the point. The wheel has been invented. Either platforms like Google, okay, so here's the real point. If Pornhub has done it, what the fuck is Google's excuse? And all these other platforms we're talking about, but specifically the big ones that have a lot of time and resources to do this. They have no excuse. It's just that the public is not aware how solvable this problem is. So here's my idea to make it profit driven. Hypothetically, if you knew that XYZ search engine had eradicated child sex abuse material, was monitoring every piece of content to make sure it's legal, but also consensual, meaning even if you're adult, you're not images against your will, blah, blah, blah. if you knew they were doing the right thing, would you or would you not boycott Google, who is infested with child sex abuse material as well as other illegal things, and gravitate towards XYZ search engine that was solving these problems? If enough of us did that, we could affect their profits. Even if it's like 20%, it would get their attention in a way that would help them either implement the wheel that has already been invented or reinvent the wheel, but you have to at least uphold these minimal standards. Now,
I agree with you.
It's such a stupid problem, I can't take it seriously, as you can tell. I'm also working on the right politician to make the sounds with their mouth so that we can give them a pretty package with the bow that makes them look very pretty so they can like actually stand on stage and protect children for real this time though.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the only gap, like I'm summarizing so much here. There is a gap in the law that I've identified, and typically, I said this earlier, I'm super not at all a big fan of like new bills and band-aids that do nothing. However, in the realm of online exploitation, per the law, tech platforms are required to report child sex abuse material to NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, when they identify it. They are required to report it. Lots of holes in there though, because their average response time is 10 fucking days, which is retarded. Anyway, okay, back up. So they're Okay, so they're required to report it, but they are not required to find it. So they don't look for it. Not required.
And that's a problem because that goes.
They are not.
That would come. Yeah, that would knock out what I was just thinking.
Platform. They are only required to report when they find something bad. So, if we ready, this is so stupid. Okay, so we have the right politician. I'm actually working on the right one. I think it's gonna work. All right, making the right sounds with their mouth and being like, "Hi, you have 6 months to enforce the law and make sure all the content on your platform is legal. After that time frame, we will have a $1 million fine per piece of content identified." Watch how quickly that shit changes. Isn't that stupid? It'll work. I'm just saying it's stupid. Here we are, though.
I agree. And I understand completely. I'm following. Yeah. I'm completely following what you're saying. And I agree with you. It is.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you have to have something, and I'm sure they do, maybe just ignoring it, that says if we see a 12, 10, 13-year-old on here, right, and content is coming through or whatever the case, there's got to be something that filters and censors that out. And if you're saying by law we're responsible for our platform but not for the content that's on it, I think within what you were speaking about, Defender, then that should be implemented. Yeah, they need to be held accountable, right? Not only for your platform, but for the content flowing through your platform. And that will also change it as well.
Absolutely. Like Sandy knows, other people that have worked in the space know how aggressive these predators are. Like we are not talking. Oh, my live is being flagged for hate speech. It looks like
what?
A predator. Cute. We'll wrap up soon anyway. But yeah, these are very solvable problems. The public needs to know how solvable they are, because if they were aware, they would be pissed off with the truth. If they knew how intentional it was that these platforms are allowing these things to thrive, the public would be pissed off enough to get enough attention around the idea. Now, again, back to the premise, I'm not expecting the public to actually take action. That's sad, but it's true. However, if the right politicians have the right sounds with their mouth on the screens people believe, in other words, we have to legitimize this in order, does that make sense? Then we give the politician the right pretty package, meaning the solution, like here, say this, and here's the solution. Look pretty, yay, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Give everyone what they need to make these things happen. Like, I wish it was more linear. I wish we could just know about things and handle these things, but nope, we got to do a lot of smiling and waving, so it is what it is.
I'm looking at my decoy phone. I have 50 friend requests. Come and join.
Every single time I do any kind of another violation for hate speech and hateful behaviors. Whoa.
What are we, 2 now? 2 for 2?
Right, yep.
And then I had another agency the other week saying we are too busy to take the call called CPS and hang up on us.
Hateful
wow.
behaviors.
You know what? I'd like to raise you. I'll raise you one on that one. So there's a situation going on. You call CPS. to tell, you tell the worker, hey, this is going on with this child, and they tell you, oh, well, did you report it to CPS? Aren't you CPS? I'll wage you that one.
I had another one that's saying, I just found a child yesterday, and her mom's in the UK, and her mother is a safeguarder for the local school.
Wow.
And her child explored herself online to these predators on another platform. Sorry. And her daughter, yeah, she's a safeguarder of a local school in the UK.
Fun.
Yeah, and then I told you this, Kim, before. I had a multi-million-dollar NFL player's daughter that was 11, exploited herself online, knocked on the law enforcement, knocked on the door, and the mother was screaming to us, are we going to pay for her child's therapy? And that's a multi-million-dollar contract NFL's daughter. And he played for the Indianapolis Colts. Just saying.
Yeah.
Did we hear anything back from him? Did we even get a thank you from him? No, other than his wife screaming at us, asking if we're going to pay for her therapy after we woke her up from her nap.
I mean, law enforcement's job for them on a volunteer basis, might I add, protecting her child, which I'm not blaming any parent, but
Nope.
she has the ability to also protect. That's also not your job, but here we are. Yeah.
Here we are. And
Sandy,
like
you know,
we said before, why are these platforms not accountability? Because they did go out for a warrant for the platform, but they don't respond.
yeah.
There's nothing. They're like, okay, there's nothing we can do. They're not going to help.
Yeah. Wild.
And that guy, I'm just saying, that guy that we played on the other platform, Adam, and I think me and Machine know who he is. He's still out there. He's still preying on children tonight. I could play that, but I'm not going to upset anyone tonight.
Yeah, that would be some hate speech.
I think I know who she means, but yeah, well, we're already towing the line tonight as it is, but yeah, I think I have an idea what she means. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Adam, what he said to a child.
Yeah.
The incredible.
Horrified to see what children see on the internet.
Yep. If anyone wants to do it, let me know. I'd be glad to get you into it.
Yeah, Sandy, we definitely. I know it's on me because I definitely need to catch up. I will
No problem.
talk to you offline about a whole lot, but yeah,
No problem.
I want to involve you and Sandy in these law enforcement training programs. Like, there's some things that are in progress. There are a lot that are still in the fledgling stages, but it is definitely about creating systems. You know what I mean? Blueprints, or like just think super basic, because like we tend to overthink and like, oh, it needs to be this whole big spaceship, and I'm like, we just need a foundation. We just need them to like, anyway, not be mopping the ocean. Let's actually do something real helpful.
Sadly to say, we had law enforcement call us and said, we just got this call. What do you want us to do about it? What? You law enforcement. Go to the child's house, take the phone, put it in airplane mode, put it in a duty bag, get a consent to search, try to find the predator that exploited the child.
A little wellness check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly to say, law enforcement have no clue what to do.
Yeah.
But
Another thing.
I was just going to say real quick. Pardon me, real quick. I think it's high time that we. I'll talk to you about this offline, though, Kim. Not this weekend because we have the Father's Day special on the air, but maybe the week after, either during the week or that Saturday. I think we should have some of the. I'm eyeing some of the people that you are not here that were here earlier, and a few that are here. If you want to step it up a notch or 5, we need to get these people on the air. We need to get over 100,000 at least listeners listening to them. TikTok is great. YouTube is fine. But we're going to step this up to the big leagues. It's time. These people need to be given a platform. I'm limited on what I can do. I'm sorry that this happened to people. I try to do what I can. It pisses me off as a parent, as a human being. And you know how I feel about this. We've done many, many things together, but I think it's high time. Of course, Kim would be there. It should be my, you know, I don't know. What's that thing next to the motorcycle? The sidecar. There we go. But a very nice sidecar.
Say the Robinson Batman.
I think it's time we get, people need to hear this. Like I said, we need to bring it so you can get a bigger reach. If you have the guts to go on there on the air with me and do it, I will give you the platform. You have my word. Kim will vouch for me. I will certainly do it. I'll speak to Kim offline about it today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. And the weekend after this, I think might be good for a Saturday. We'll have a lot of people to listen. I think it's I know it's important. Just that's when I say, well, I could only do so much, and I feel bad. Well, this is what I can do, so I will do that. I just want to throw that out there, and I don't make empty promises. I will make it happen. So just want to throw that out there. If there's a little light at the end of the tunnel, at least these people need to listen to you guys. They really need to listen. I'll tell them to shut the. I don't want to say it with these ladies in here, but I'm not really. Yeah, Sicilian Scorpios from North Jersey aren't known for being pleasant, so I will get their attention, trust me. And you need to say what needs to be said. And you have my word as a gentleman. You will get the opportunity to do so. That I will promise you. Kim has been on many of these. So that's it. I will yield now. I probably will yield for the night, but I wanted to do what I could, and that's what I can do. So there you go.
You can definitely
Appreciate you
include me
being
in
here.
that.
Yes, I just wanted to say, because I'm going to be leaving too, but I'm so grateful for this night to actually have heard your stories. And, you know, I feel so much love for you right now for what you've been through and how brave you are for sharing it. Because that's how we also heal ourselves, is we know that we're heard. You know, even if I can't do anything, I heard you. So thank you.
I appreciate you, Gypsy.
I worked in the Child Protective Services. I worked for a shelter for young people for 10 years in the 80s and 90s. And we never took in a child who was trafficked. Well, we did. We took in one child who was trafficked. And, you know, it was very hard for us because we didn't really truly understand what she was going through. But her big thing, I worked at night. I was a night care worker. I worked every night from 11 to 8 in the morning. But her big thing was she just did not like being indoors. And so during the daylight hours, the staff let her sit out at the picnic table by herself. They gave her anything she wanted. You want cigarettes? You need a blanket? You want a book? You know, what do you need? And they would just let her sit there. And we keep an eye on her. And, you know, I did it at night. I let her sit out there every night until dawn, if that's what she wanted to do. I don't know if it helped, but, you know, in that time period, we didn't have the internet. We did in 87, I think. But, you know, it was not as talked about. Child trafficking, child exploitation. You know, I served a lot of children in 10 years, but only one who was really hurt by trafficking. And so, you know, I just wanted to thank you so very much for sharing your stories. I look forward to seeing you on Greg's platform.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yes. I want to thank you as well. This was beautiful, and stay beautiful, ladies, because to go through what you've gone through and she's standing there so bright. I love it. And be able to speak about it and even continue to help, you know, some of these, we'll just say knuckleheads. Since we got flagged, we'll just say knuckleheads. Be able to help some of these knuckleheads to become aware and to know how to help actually make a difference. I think you're doing a great job.
Yes.
Don't stop doing what you're doing. Don't discredit any part of what you're doing. Continue.
Thank you. I really
Kim, you still have my number, or is your number changed?
My number has not changed. Oh, I'm looking for my phone. It's right here. My number has not changed.
Totally something I would do.
Kim is tired. That's like saying, where are my glasses? They're on your head, Kim.
Dude, I've totally been talking to somebody on the phone looking for my phone. Legitimately
that
talking
last
to someone
night.
looking for my phone.
I 100% did that last night.
And it was funny because my friend was like, I was like, man, I can't find it. And she was like, what are you looking for? And I was like, my phone. She was like, just stop for a second and think about what you're doing right now.
I have a lot of those moments because, we deal with so much and we get so busy sometimes. And so, in the midst of it, you put something down and it's like, geez, where did it